It all kicks off at the end of a massive battle, where humanity's 5 heroes took on the Demon Emperor on the back of the Moon Beast. With a devastating impact, the final showdown finally reaches its dramatic and destructive conclusion. The villain was defeated, but the heroes paid a heavy price, and Faya tearfully calls out for Glon. Beside them, the Sage of Holy Light tries to use healing magic, warning that it's no use anymore. Soika explains that the enemy's final attack was fatal, making it clear that the exhausted Glon won't be able to heal her. Just then, one of the fallen heroes tells everyone to shut it, immediately. Exhausted and badly wounded, he asks them to stop trying to save him at all costs. Accepting his own fate, the young man claims he's completely satisfied with this glorious end. He remembers they promised to return together, but agrees with the mage that this is the end of the line for them. Suddenly, Glon is floored when he hears the Demon Emperor's voice announcing the fight is over. The monster reveals that they were all tricked, because whoever finished him off would end up being assimilated by him. Confused, our main character looks at his own arm and realizes this is the creature's true ability. The demonic flesh begins to spread rapidly, taking over the Immaculate Knight's entire right arm. The terrifying entity says he prefers to call this technique his one and only salvation. Taking control of the situation, the dark mass grows and transforms into a bizarre demonic head attached to the warrior's body. The villain declares that those who defeated him are worthy of becoming his new body to extinguish all life. Focusing on the knight, the creature announces that he chose him for having the strongest human body of all. In a desperate act, the dark-haired hero is pierced by his companion's corrupted arm. He'd rather meet his end at a friend's hands than become a mere tool for destruction. He begs the MC to drop the hesitation and not commit the sin of sparing a doomed ally. He reminds him that there's still one family left to protect and urges him to hurry, as he can't resist for much longer. He questions why his friend's sword is trembling so much, asking if he lacks the courage to strike. Glon grips the weapon tightly, fighting against the control that has taken over his own body. The Demon Emperor warns that any resistance is futile, as he has completely assimilated his entire right side. Understanding the situation, the wounded warrior realizes that the hesitation wasn't just emotional weakness. The corrupted arm lunges forward again, brutally running through the young man's chest without any mercy. Even bleeding profusely, the friend states that only someone lethal and relentless would be worthy of using such power. Calling him bro, he brings up the special skill that makes the knight permanently stronger with every life he takes. In a final effort, he grabs the armed limb and shouts his leader's name with determination. He asks that their sacrifice not be in vain, entrusting his sister to Glon's care before the end. The image of his 3 fallen companions flashes through the warrior's mind in a moment of pure pain and total focus. Absorbing the power from the lives taken, he raises his sword with a destructive aura exploding around him. The demon scoffs, asking why go to such lengths when the sacrificed lives are barely enough to free his right hand. Maintaining a firm stance, the hero replies that just one hand is enough to solve the problem. Seeing the knight point the sword at his own neck, the monster laughs and asks if lopping off his head is the grand solution. Annoyed by the audacity, the creature screams that it's had enough of wasting time on this. The enormous monstrous hand grabs the blade, warning the human to stop testing its patience. Completely unshaken, Glon just glares at the beast as blood trickles down his face. The holy sword shatters, and the enemy boasts that no attack in the world can harm its invincible shell. The dark aura grows violently, trying to swallow what's left of the desperate warrior's body. However, in a moment of clarity, a doubt arises about the parasite villain's true invulnerability. Seizing the distraction, the protagonist plunges his own left hand directly into his corrupted chest. Brutally tearing out his own core, he proves that the so-called invincibility was a huge lie. Caught completely off guard by the self-destructive act, the Demon Emperor panics and stammers his rival's name. Without a second thought, the hero crushes his own heart with all his might to end it once and for all. The scene shifts to a sunset landscape, bringing a chilling calm after the chaos. The villain's voice echoes in frustration for having underestimated someone born to vanquish and destined to go out fighting. Kneeling with his chest destroyed, the hero laments that the demons weren't annihilated and no one was saved. With deep sorrow, he feels the weight of his own failure in his final moments of consciousness. His body gives into the injuries as he whispers that this is all a real shame. Time passes, and the scene moves to a desolate land, marked by a massive, grim skull. A mysterious voice laments to the night sky that 5 long years have passed since the leader's departure. Near a wooden altar, 2 monsters argue because one of them has no idea why they have prisoners there. The praying mantis demon tells his subordinate to shut up, revealing that tonight is the 5th anniversary of the master's passing. Addressing the crowd, he guarantees that the new generation will never forget the great sacrifice of their creator. Raising his sharp blades, the master of ceremonies excitedly announces the official start of the dark ritual. Without wasting time, a swift and brutal slice seals the fate of the 4 girls offered in sacrifice. The monstrous audience goes wild, roaring and celebrating the bloodbath aggressively. Now, the leader decrees that demonic blood must also be spilled to honor the late emperor. Trapped in a tangle of thorns at the center of the altar, a young prisoner silently awaits his turn. Waking up suddenly, the prisoner is completely confused, trying to understand why he isn't gone. He looks down and sees the executioner's sharp claws planted firmly on the altar's grimy floor. Grabbed brutally by the hair, the young man hears the monster tell him to stay quiet like a piece of trash. The praying mantis mocks him, calling him the weakest demon in existence and unworthy of a name. Hearing those words, the young man is shocked to realize he has been reincarnated into the body of an enemy. Finding it amusing, the executioner states that serving as a sacrifice is the greatest honor he could ever receive. A spray of blood flies through the air as the young man suffers the first violent blow. Annoyed by the victim's squirming, the executioner tells him to stop wriggling, complaining that he's ruining the ritual. Just then, the prisoner breaks his bonds in the blink of an eye, releasing an impressive dark energy. Startled by the sudden strength, the master of ceremonies realizes too late that the boy was captured on purpose. Exuding a killer aura, the MC coldly questions how this useless half-breed doesn't recognize him. Trembling from head to toe, the executioner stammers in panic as he senses the boy's true identity. An overwhelming presence forms, and the monster finally screams Glon's name in pure terror. Down below, the other demons in the audience are frozen, unable to comprehend the bizarre turn of events. Fearing for his life, the praying mantis flees, shoving his minions and yelling for them to get out of the way. Running for his life, the praying mantis orders his subordinates to hold back the intruder, warning that the 4 lords are watching. The MC's mind travels to the past, recalling when a massive demonic dragon emerged from the waters, destroying the sea god's sanctuary. That coastal attack was so swift and violent that only a single human managed to arrive in time to fight. Sailing alone on a small raft, the lone warrior stood in the way to block the entire enemy fleet. Glon recalls his own glory, remembering when he faced beasts of legend to defend humanity. Fully clad in his armor, the hero of old demanded that the entire army follow his command against the evil hordes. Gripping the hilt of his sword with determination, he braced for the brutal impact of that relentless war. Back in the present, the boy surveys the damage he's caused and coldly notes that everyone around is gone. Sliced in half, the executioner's body falls, reminding the hero that, in the past, everyone perished except for Lord Shu. The bloody history records that almost all the ancient demon kings were exterminated during the Great War, leaving only a single survivor to tell the tale. With his face covered in blood, the former knight maintained his relentless posture, even after suffering severe injuries in the great battle. Under a heavy storm, he remained standing amidst the destruction, wielding his blade surrounded by bodies. Utterly terrified in the present, the praying mantis monster faces his end, unable to process his opponent's strength. Without mercy, the protagonist explains that you just need to force the joints at the right angle to easily shatter a crustacean demon. Looking at his own hands, the young man confirms his resurrection and notices his ability to level up from takedowns has dropped all the way back to level 1. Enraged, the surviving minions charge, demanding that everyone attack the boy at once. A swift movement cuts through the air, severing the monster's limb before it could complete its charge. A relentless series of strikes tears the enemies apart, leaving a trail of destructive energy ripping through the scene. Assessing his own body, the young man complains that the lackeys are too weak, as his strength barely increased even after taking 9 lives. Taking advantage of the chaos, a massive demonic centipede slithers onto the altar, ready to crush the intruder. The creature swings its thorny tail with extreme violence, executing a swift attack. Agile and precise, Glon pierces the giant monster's body, splattering nasty blood across the wooden floor. Just then, a cry of pain echoes nearby, with a human girl tearfully begging to be let go. The warrior comes across the 4 female prisoners used as sacrifices, all bleeding heavily from deep cuts. Crouching near the bodies, the young man urgently assesses the situation to try and save those innocent lives. Concentrating energy in his hand, the protagonist prepares to summon his old holy healing magic. The spell immediately fails and his arm transforms into tentacles, leaving him horrified to see his own corrupted flesh. Looking at the victims on the ground, the harsh reality hits him as he realizes it's already too late. Consumed by frustration, the hero falls to his knees in the reddish pool, lamenting his own powerlessness. Staring at his reflection in the blood, Glon finally understands that he wasn't resurrected, but reincarnated into the skin of the race he despises most. Holding his face, the warrior feels pure disgust for inhabiting such a shameful form. Bearing sharp fangs, he curses this lowly, despicable race from the bottom of his soul. Exploding in rage, the young man screams that the only purpose of these beasts is to be exterminated by him. Clenching his fists, the protagonist tries to contain his frustration while attempting to control his own fury. Suddenly, an insect henchman tries to intimidate him, promising to torture him until he begs like a miserable human. The lackey yells, demanding to know if the supposedly weak demon understands the consequences of his actions, while Glon just bemoans his own luck. Even finding the enemy's aura strangely terrifying, the monster decides to bet on intimidation to force him to back down. Wasting no time on talk, the hero leaps from the altar and splits the demonic centipede in half with a single lethal blow. Landing lightly, he scatters the creature's parts across the stone floor without a hint of mercy. Watching the blood stain his hands again, the young man reflects on his new condition and the path that lies ahead. With a terrifying aura and his eyes glowing with malice, he concludes that he has nothing to complain about if the goal is to keep slaughtering demons. Walking away from the kill zone, the boy remembers hearing the enemies mention that 5 years have passed since the Emperor's end. Strolling calmly through the night forest, he decides the priority is to find a safe hideout before investigating the world. Climbing a rocky wall, Glon recognizes the skull of a giant troll, confirming he's on the same plane where he fought in the past. Staring at a fortress built right on top of the colossal skull, he finds it comical that modern monsters are using the corpse as a military base. The vast landscape reveals the forgotten skeleton embedded in Round Mountain, lit only by the faint moonlight. Standing at the entrance of a hidden cave, the protagonist confirms his memories were correct upon finding his old shelter. Exploring the dusty interior, he notes there are no traces of monsters, making the place a perfect temporary hideout. Quickly, the young man manages to light a warm fire to ward off the cold of the lonely night. Sitting on the stone floor, Glon finally relaxes his tired shoulders near the crackling flames. The firelight illuminates the boy's thoughtful face. As he gets lost in silent memories of a better time, he raises his own pointed hands, still struggling to accept the bizarre transformation of his race. Suddenly, the hero's mind flashes back to the past, remembering a time when his friends played carefree near the camp. In the memory, the knight appears wearing a ridiculous grass skirt, while the mage mocks the sewing skills his companion praised so much. The nostalgic scene shows everyone laughing out loud at the absurd situation, united by a true and unbreakable friendship. Back in the cold reality of the cave, the protagonist's gaze becomes heavy, filled with a deep sorrow. A comforting calm softens his face, showing how much he values and cherishes those precious memories. Very gently, the young man holds a small, rustic carving he made himself to honor his fallen companion. He carefully places the small knight figurine on the ground, leaving it protected by the firelight. Beside it, 2 other stone figures rest in silence, forming the trio of friends the hero will never forget. With a lost look in his eyes, the hero whispers bitterly about the tragic events of that fateful day. Gripping his own skin, he blames himself deeply, wishing he had been stronger to prevent the disaster. Staring into the cave's shadows, a sharp determination begins to replace the protagonist's initial sadness. Away from the warmth of the fire, Glon remains isolated in the dark, lost in his own troubled thoughts. The flames dance violently, reflecting the spark of vengeance that has just been reignited in the young man's chest. Thinking of the countless lives ruined in these 5 years, the warrior decides to use his current body as a disguise to destroy the monsters from the inside out. Suddenly, a sharp headache hits him, flooding his mind with the fragmented memories of the original host. The memories show the body's former owner being beaten by other monsters, suffering constant abuse for being a weak half-breed unworthy of eating meat. To make matters worse, the minion from Round Mountain was forced to work the land, tilling the soil like a simple, scared farmer. Another memory reveals a rudimentary classroom, where a burly teacher was wrapping up a theory lesson on global affairs. In the school scene, the former demon knelt, complaining about the theory lessons and eagerly begging for practical combat classes. Walking through the cave in the present, Glon analyzes that the monsters of the past were born only to destroy, acting as dumb tools of war. Reaching the exit, he's impressed to realize that in just 5 years, the enemies have put down roots and developed their own civilization. Admiring the beautiful sunrise on the horizon, the hero takes responsibility for the tragedy, lamenting that he wasn't powerful enough to stop it. Bathed in the morning sunlight, the knight renews his great oath, promising to achieve absolute power in this life to completely annihilate the demonic race. The local map indicates the exact position of training camp number 2. This recruit military base is located right at the foot of the gigantic Round Mountain. The demon instructor asks if everyone remembers the current state of the continent, warning that he won't waste time repeating the material. Analyzing the situation, the protagonist concludes that he's more or less figured out the context of the place. In the 5 years after the Emperor's passing, the demons established 5 courts and waged a war against humanity with no clear winner. Changing the subject, the teacher announces that today's main lesson will be about talent marks. He explains that these abilities are innate, because unlike inferior humans, every monster is born with one. But he emphasizes that using this power consumes a lot of internal energy, regardless of race. The strength is divided from 1 to 6 marks, and he warns that it's pointless to talk about higher levels to a bunch of newbies. Displaying his intense aura, the instructor reveals he is a 2-mark warrior and warns that leveling up is extremely difficult. Glon looks at his own hand, noticing he has only 1 mark and needs a real opportunity to test his technique. The teacher continues his speech, stating that reaching 2 marks is the crucial moment for awakening one's ultimate ability. Just then, a recruit violently bumps into the protagonist and tells him to get out of the way fast. Everyone quickly makes way for the arrival of the new lord, considered a military genius. The arrogant newcomer questions who let this useless servant in, while his lackey tells Glon to get back to his hoe. Annoyed by the commotion, the instructor orders them to throw the servant in the trash and announces the immediate start of practical training. He explains that raw power and talent alone don't guarantee a definitive victory in combat. Pulling a heavy chain, the teacher states that tactics are vital, ordering the class to find the creature's weak spot. Finding the situation interesting, the protagonist thinks something fun is finally about to happen at the camp. The master reveals that this aggressive beast was created by the emperor, with only 1 specimen left in the world. Being a super strong howling demon, he challenges the students to find its only weakness. Watching from a distance, the reincarnated warrior finds the whole dynamic to be a big, pointless drag. Seeing no use in the class, he decides to leave, lamenting that he can't just slaughter everyone to level up. While the students guess wrong answers, Glon considers that causing a commotion now would only bring unnecessary trouble. The wild beast's massive red eye glows with an uncontrollable killer instinct. The beast thrashes violently, straining the heavy chains that bind it in the arena. Holding the creature with great difficulty, the master yells, demanding that the creature stay still. Confidently, he declares that the neck is the weak spot, guaranteeing he can choke out even stronger warriors. However, the beast's monstrous jaw slowly opens, letting out a bizarre noise. The monster mocks the new generation's naivety, leaving the instructor shocked to discover the beast can talk. The beast confesses it pretended to be mindless for weeks, just to complete its mission of exterminating the recruits all at once. With extreme ease, the monster shatters the heavy iron collar. In a brutal move, the creature cuts the instructor in half without giving him any chance to defend himself. Panic takes over the newbies, who scatter in desperation. The beast advances relentlessly, slicing through dozens of demons and bathing the training ground in blood. The genius newcomer flees, terrified by the opponent's strength, deciding he'll need to use his secret weapon. But he ends up tripping on the ground, furiously cursing whoever dared to get in his escape path. Right in front of him, Glon calmly adjusts his wrappings, ignoring the massacre around him. The gigantic howling demon focuses its attention directly on the lone boy. Charging with full fury, the monster taunts, asking if the brat really thinks he can escape. Lying on the dirt, the Blue Lord panics, realizing he has no choice but to use his trick. The beast's destructive aura engulfs the scene as the lethal attack closes in on Glon. Without retreating an inch, the knight faces the danger head on, his eyes glowing with power. Feeling an overwhelming pressure, the creature freezes, noticing the young man's terrifying strength. The monster stops its charge, completely confused for not instilling fear, wondering if the enemy knows its weakness. The beast remembers that its brethren perished many years ago, concluding that no newbie could know that secret. A heavy blow hits the ground, creating a strong wave of dust and destruction across the field. With blood in its eyes, the monster declares that the boy's firm stance is nothing but a big bluff. Glon shoots a deadly glare and coldly warns that if the beast takes one more step, it will meet its end. Finding the threat amusing, the creature decides to get serious and tells the brat to witness its authority. He summons his primordial power with full force, unleashing the demonic descent technique. The reincarnated hero stands his ground, awaiting the impact of the charge. A cloud of smoke explodes into the air, sending debris flying in all directions. However, the monster flees, leaping into the sky, finding it too risky to test its luck against a possible master in disguise. Watching the enemy flee so cowardly, the Blue Lord is left speechless on the ground. He tells the protagonist not to get a big head over it, reaffirming his own superiority. Believing it was some kind of cheap trick, the blonde newcomer reaches out to grab the boy. In the blink of an eye, Glon rips off the recruit's arm with extreme violence. Wiping the blood from his hand indifferently, the hero ignores the injured aggressor. The amputated demon screams in agony and hatred, cursing the boy as a filthy farmer. Impressed by the scene, the other recruits surround Glon, demanding to know how he scared off the beast. A brute tells the servant to spill the secret, angrily asking if he's gone deaf. The protagonist recalls the old tactical manual, which stated that this beast's vision only reacts to continuous movement. Satisfied with his strategy, he knows that standing completely still makes him invisible to the creature. Glon scoffs at this generation's ignorance, who read a half-dozen books and acquire a blind arrogance. A lackey checks if the blue boss is okay, who lies, saying his legs just went weak from extreme exhaustion. Overflowing with hatred, the Lord orders his minions to follow the boy and finish him in the most humiliating way possible. He claims that watching that guy's demise will be extremely satisfying. Walking away from the camp, the knight journeys alone through the desolate lands of the Silent Continent. Right behind, the group of assassins plans an ambush using the acid mist of one of their accomplices. The smoke quickly covers the forest as the leader tells them to hurry up so they don't lose their target. One of the minions scoffs at the chase, pointing out that the weak boy's poison doesn't scare anyone. To speed up the capture, the group decides to split up in the thick fog. Suddenly, one of the monsters panics and calls for help, screaming in pain after being stung in the stomach. A brutal poison explosion instantly ends the lackey's life in the middle of the smoke. A violent explosion of green poison erupts from the fallen lackey's body. The dense toxic smoke spreads rapidly through the forest, engulfing the other assassins. Desperate, the demons scream in pain as they feel the poison intensely burning their eyes. As the mist conceals everything, a sinister snake-like aura begins to manifest in the air. Observing the confusion, the protagonist decides to use these disgusting beings to test the applications of his new mark. Glon focuses the energy in his eyes and activates thermal vision to see perfectly in the darkness. Using the serpent strike, he channels the power into his arms and hits the hidden enemies without any difficulty. The sound of bodies falling catches the red leader's attention, who curses the toxic mist for blinding him. Completely furious, the monster lets out a loud howl while trying to clear the poison by spinning his weapon. From a distance, the knight just watches the enemy's desperation with a chilling calm. Finding the dead minions, the red boss scoffs, saying the brat is nothing without the smoke to hide in. Overflowing with hatred, the creature charges at high speed, ready to crush its opponent. In an aggressive leap, the lackey delivers a heavy blow, creating a large slash of dark energy. Standing in the same spot, the reincarnated hero faces the lethal attack head-on without a hint of hesitation. Unable to react, the red demon's chest is pierced in a brutal and lethal counter-attack. Fallen and gravely wounded, the monster begs for his life, claiming he was just following the blonde lord's orders. The protagonist maintains a cold gaze and warns that this pathetic excuse isn't enough to spare him. Desperate, the lackey offers to guide him to the boss's secret cave, guaranteeing the place holds valuable treasures. At this, the boy ponders that absorbing rare items will be essential to awaken the next evolution of his talent mark. The two then walk through the forest until they reach a huge waterfall hidden in the mountain. Pointing to the waterfall, the demon indicates the entrance to the hideout and suggests the intruder go in first. Not trusting a single word, Glon grabs the prisoner by the neck and brutally shoves him against the wall of water. Immediately, the monster's body is pierced by dozens of deadly traps activated at the cave's entrance. With the passage now completely safe, the knight moves forward and ironically thanks the guide for his sacrifice. He walks calmly through the dark, round tunnel that deepens into the wet rock. Far away, a messenger arrives shouting with urgency at the main base built upon the Great Skull. Kneeling, the lackey reports that the howling beast destroyed the camp, but retreated in fear of a simple serpent servant. The mountain's leader finds this bizarre turn of events extremely intriguing. Relaxing on her throne, the Bone Crusher shows great interest in this mysterious, skilled recruit. Back in the cave, the hero stares at a small wooden box, quite disappointed with the lack of options. He finds only a hidden pouch inside, and soon a furious voice tells him to drop the item immediately. The blonde lord storms the place in an explosive advance, ready to retrieve his belongings. Enraged, the newcomer tries to land a direct punch, indignant at the audacity of someone touching his treasure. The protagonist defends with ease and throws the enemy back, making him curse in pain from his injured leg. Analyzing Glon's oppressive presence, the boss realizes why his 5 minions were slaughtered so quickly. Knowing the space is too tight to fight, the monster decides not to risk combat with a weakened leg. He opts for a strategic retreat and flees through the waterfall at full speed. Using his talent mark, the Lord sprouts feathered wings to quickly escape through the sky. Passing through the curtain of water, the reincarnated warrior notes with deep hatred that his target belongs to the bird race. The young man walks out of the cave, staring at the fugitive shining in the air. An aura of dark energy overflows from his body like a sea of darkness. Seized by uncontrollable fury, the power explodes around the boy in a violent spiral. He screams that the winged race is the most cursed of all and the only one that truly deserves to be annihilated. In a terrifying leap, Glon reaches the monster in the sky and grabs him by the neck with brutality. Unable to break free, the enemy plummets in a freefall toward the lake below. Still in the air, the protagonist lands a direct punch to the Lord's face, splattering blood everywhere. Sizing the opening, he follows up with a crushing blow that sends the creature flying with maximum force. With the violent impact, the monster hits the lake's surface, raising a massive column of water. Agile, the warrior lands smoothly, gliding over the water's mirror-like surface with great balance. He stabilizes his posture, facing the enemy with his usual coldness. Catching his breath, The winged demon mocks the boy's bad luck for falling right into the dangerous biolake. Suddenly, enormous monstrous beasts emerge from the water, surrounding the knight from all sides. The Lord explains that those are bloodthirsty mountain insects, and there are tons of them in this region. Hovering safely, the boss announces he'll love watching the brat be devoured alive until only bones are left. He brags about the lethality of those primitive beasts, claiming they could have easily exterminated humans in the past. Paying no mind to the speech, Glon slices the first worm with a quick, dark attack. Moving with mastery, he shatters more creatures with a lethal swing of his serpent arms. A merciless sequence of cuts destroys the aquatic monsters, staining the water with dark blood. Shocked by the massacre, the flying enemy breaks into a cold sweat witnessing such absurd strength up close. Trying to hide his fear, he yells that the young man will pass from old age before he can finish off the entire infinite swarm. Concentrating the power of his mark, the hero's fingertips manifest sharp serpent shadows. A colossal explosion of dark claws sweeps across the water, shredding dozens of beasts in a single instant. Still underestimating his opponent, the bird mocks the speed of the blow, calling him a filthy farmer. Ignoring the taunts, the protagonist accelerates his movements and tears through the beasts in a trail of green light. The Lord continues to mock the survival attempt, insisting that the effort is slow and useless. Confident in his victory, the winged creature tells the boy to await his end as he's worn down by exhaustion. Suddenly, a blast of evil energy erupts from the center of the lake, destroying the entire horde at once. The shredded remains of thousands of worms rain down upon the swampy landscape. In the midst of the destruction, the knight turns his deadly gaze directly toward the target floating in the sky. Using his full strength, he launches a massive serpent of pure darkness toward the blonde lord. The attack grazes the enemy's face, cutting through the wind with crushing pressure. Sweating in terror, the boss can't understand how the young man's speed keeps increasing every second. Silence takes over the place, revealing the water's surface completely covered with pieces of corpses. Focused on his own progress, the young man notes with some frustration that all that slaughter was only enough to reach the second mark. Overflowing with pure bloodlust, he guarantees that this power is already enough to take that bird's head off in the next blink of an eye. Outraged by the audacity, the Wind Lord furiously shouts, asking if his opponent is crazy for spewing such nonsense. Just then, the hero charges forward at an absurd speed, leaving the enemy completely shocked by his swiftness. Preparing a bow of pure energy, the creature wields the weapon and tells the boy to stop underestimating him. He reveals he found that magic arrow by chance, believing it was fate itself granting him that power. Without wasting time, the shot charged with purple lightning is launched, cutting through the air with full force. The flying monster follows the trajectory with a fixed, surgical gaze on his target. The brutal attack pierces the protagonist's chest directly, catching the knight by surprise. However, mysterious dark tentacles suddenly start emerging from the wound, leaving him quite confused. The dark energy grows violently, enveloping the young man's entire body in an incredibly dense mass. With the weight of the impact, the bizarre monstrous cocoon plummets into the swamp's waters. In a few seconds, the warrior sinks completely into the murky, dark waters of the area. Landing safely on the shore, the bird wonders what happened and if that lethal blow ended the fight. A pink-haired demon girl runs to him, extremely worried, asking if her brother is okay. The Lord reassures his sister, guaranteeing he just dealt with a useless little thief who tried to steal their things. Showing a bloodied item in his hands, he explains that he followed the intruder's feather trail to this spot. The boss hands over the cure for the girl's eyes, vowing to protect the item even if it costs him his own life. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the lake, the hero doesn't understand why the arrow didn't destroy his flesh and instead turned him into this. A serpent of pure energy shines brightly next to his face as he analyzes the strange situation. Suddenly, it clicks, and the knight finally understands what is happening to his new body. An overwhelming charge of purple lightning begins to emanate from the dark waters. He realizes his body acted on instinct, desiring the arrow's power, calling his own form a greedy serpent. The dark cocoon pulsates underwater, absorbing this new, limitless energy. At this crucial moment, the mass of darkness undergoes the classic process of shedding its skin. Tearing through the old shell, the protagonist emerges from the water in an absurd and terrifying explosion of power. Far away, the Lord's sister observes the calm lake and concludes that the enemy sank, completely gone. Relieved by the supposed victory, the monster sighs, stating that they can finally relax in peace. The two turn their backs and begin to walk calmly under the heavy rain lashing the forest. But the flying bird suddenly freezes, feeling the presence of a wild and destructive thunder from afar. The swamp's surface begins to bubble and glow intensely with a menacing light. A massive column of lightning erupts from the lake, tearing through the scenery with extreme aggression. The explosion raises a brutal wave that startles the siblings on the shore, catching them by surprise. Completely panicked, the girl warns that she saw something leap out from within that powerful lightning. Trembling with fear, she points her finger directly at the statue in the middle of the waters, indicating the danger. Atop the wet rock, the hero's imposing silhouette waits coldly under the storm. The monster freezes in terror, unable to believe the intruder actually survived the perfect attack. Fully recharged with his new mark, the reincarnated warrior exudes an overwhelming and murderous aura. Seeing his end up close, the blonde boss quickly steps in front to act as a shield for his sister. Gliding smoothly through the air, Glon disdainfully announces that he made them wait too long for their own execution. The young man advances, apologizing for the delay, while the Lord flies in furiously, telling him not to get so cocky. The two collide violently in the open sky, generating an absurd clash of yellow and purple energy. Thrown back with full force, the winged monster angrily curses the boy for tricking him. Hovering superiorly, the hero notes that trash of this level is barely enough to test his current capabilities. Without the slightest bit of mercy, the protagonist lands a blow that brutally sinks the bird into the muddy swamp. Swallowing dirty water, the Lord laments bitterly, wishing with all his soul to be just a little stronger. Staring at his distressed sister on the shore, he realizes with despair that the enemy will never spare her life. Refusing certain doom, the monster explodes in a blinding golden aura and rises with full fury. Watching from above, the knight observes the radical change in posture with a certain tone of interest. Using all his remaining strength, the Lord activates his secret authority and summons a powerful feather armor. Watching the scene emotionally, the sister confesses that she held back his true potential for too long. With a fierce look, she vows not to let him fight alone again and invokes the ability of her demonic eye. A huge portal gapes open, and a terrifying abyssal creature emerges to join forces in the battle. Completely crazed and bloodthirsty, the blonde lord lets out a savage scream, tearing his vocal cords. Uniting his own spell with the giant beast, the bird fires a torrential rain of arrows at the hero. Without showing any fear, Glon just bends his knees, preparing to receive the colossal attack. A golden storm rains down like dozens of meteors, falling to destroy the target without a trace. Extremely agile, the protagonist dodges the deadly beams, leaping toward his assailants. Seeing the swift charge, the winged boss doesn't back down and also advances for a final direct confrontation. The two warriors collide, tearing through the skies in a deafening clash of pure, wild magic. Seizing the opening, the giant beast opens its pointed maw, ready to devour the boy for good. However, the reincarnated warrior reacts in the same blink of an eye and fires the deadly bite of his dark viper. The massive serpent of dark energy pierces and destroys the abyssal creature with a single lethal blow. Watching the blood gush from the explosion, the blonde bird smiles confidently and decides to seize this chance. He dives in a spinning, fierce attack, praising the enemy's coldness for using the beast's own sacrifice as a shield. But Glon repels the golden storm with extreme ease, firing his massive charge of purple lightning. Desperate at the sight, the girl uses her support magic to increase the force of her brother's spiral. Boosted by the new spell, the flying monster's charge transforms into a devastating, luminous tornado. The colossal whirlwind of light blinds everything around and effortlessly swallows the knight's small silhouette. Certain of absolute triumph, the Lord deduces that the violent booms have left the hero completely deaf. Assessing up close, the protagonist admits the power is great, but brings his hands together, focused on his counterattack. Unleashing the full weight of his own abyss, he detonates the black storm directly into the golden hurricane. Seconds later, the scene returns to absolute silence, with the rain pattering on the two siblings floating in the lake. With difficulty, the boss hands over the cure, begging his sister to flee, but the girl refuses to abandon him. Walking menacingly over the water, the knight takes the bloody object from their hands with contempt. Kneeling and defeated in the shallow swamp, the Lord tearfully begs to have his precious treasure back. Understanding that the human eyes served only as medicine, the hero feels a deep disgust for so many cruel and unnecessary ends. Desperate in the dirty water, the Lord begs for mercy, asking Glon to take everything and spare their lives. Holding those two human eyes in his hands, he coldly questions if those people begged for mercy when they were tortured. Hearing this, the girl and her brother are completely shocked and silent, trying to understand what the enemy meant by that. But the hero has no time for hesitation and demands a direct answer, whether those victims begged for their lives or not. The siblings cringe in terror in the water, unable to say a single word in their defense before the boy. With an empty expression and a blood-stained face, the sister finally breaks the silence, stating that she simply forgot. With that, the protagonist brutally crushes the green eye, concluding that he overestimated the emotional evolution of this cursed race. Resting on the lake's edge, the hero reflects that these demons have only changed how they dispatch others for their own benefit. He notes that the essence of treating lives like trash remains the same and bites into a fruit with total disdain for the situation. Analyzing his arm bathed in dark lightning, Glon affirms that this new thunder, focused form has been his greatest achievement so far. However, the reincarnated warrior realizes that using this power consumes a lot of energy, so he can't just activate it all the time without thinking. Meanwhile, at a nearby camp, a lackey calls the region's boss to assess the bodies found nearby. The minions analyze that the two siblings had their heads taken off by a lightning strike, a violent and extremely fast method. Arriving at the crime scene, the imposing mountain leader deduces with great interest that an unwelcome guest has invaded her territory. She immediately orders that any talented newcomer who mysteriously perishes be reported, promising to investigate the case personally. Walking alone through the dense forest, the protagonist continues his journey, seeking to strengthen himself and understand the surroundings. Just then, the dangerous mountain leader appears silently, observing the boy up close from among the trees. The woman approaches him, demanding to know who he is, and the young man lies straight to her face, saying he's just a servant looking for wild berries. Bringing her face close with malice, she recognizes him as the farm slave who supposedly scared off a dangerous monster days ago. Wasting no time on small talk, Glon lunges in a swift attack, aiming for the enemy's neck by surprise. But the boss reacts with absurd agility and immobilizes the boy on the ground, crushing him with her heavy, armored legs. The impact sinks the warrior's body into the earth, leaving him completely pinned by the woman's oppressive, raw strength. She smiles provocatively and warns that he'll need to find some very good berries, otherwise she'll turn him into a nice meal. With that, the demoness walks calmly through the forest, disappearing from view and leaving the young man alone in the hole. The reincarnated hero gets up, massaging his sore arms, and concludes that this level of strength confirms her fourth talent mark. He assesses that his current body focuses on speed, putting him at a direct disadvantage against her heavy, defensive style. Walking down the path, the young man laments not being able to take her out now, as absorbing her blood would give his power a huge boost. The protagonist knows that his lack of raw strength and ignorance of the enemy's weakness reduce his chances of victory to zero. Completely consumed by predatory instinct, the young man wonders how he's going to suppress this gigantic urge to vanquish. An overwhelming presence fills the area, as the young man decides that the real hunting season has just begun. Far away in her quarters, the demon woman discards an old book, confirming that the marks on the body don't match. Analyzing a compendium of talents, she discovers the electrical storage organ and the authority of the shadow prison. Turning the page, the leader studies the ability of the Sea of Blood, where power increases based on the number of enemies absorbed. The boss assesses the oppressive strength of the corpses and the small chance of triggering the rare effect that ignores the opponent's defenses. Excited by the impressive discovery, she slaps the book against her leg, concluding that this is the mysterious intruder's ability. On the other side of the region, Glon understands that this hunt will require a lot of patience until he can accumulate enough strength. Moving in the shadows, the hero stealthily attacks the guards, focused on eliminating targets with a single blow without raising suspicion. The knight quickly hides the bodies in the foliage, ensuring that the annoying mountain leader will never discover his tracks for now. Using his absurd speed, he slices through the small spy monsters in the swamps, leaving no witnesses behind. Satisfied with the isolated location, the protagonist decides to use this perfect area to stack up takedowns and increase his stats in peace. Sometime later, a group of monsters waits at a torch-lit door at the entrance to a dangerous black market. Trying to pass discreetly, the young man is aggressively stopped by a guard who demands to see an authorization token. Ignoring the rules of this dump, Glon just throws the explosive head directly into the smuggler's bustling courtyard. The hero lands, causing an explosion of dark fire that destroys the defenses and catches all the criminals completely by surprise. Lying in the rubble, a merchant cries, complaining that the new leader banned the trade of humans and ruined their business. Trying to save his own skin, a smuggler offers a very rare steel weapon capable of drastically increasing the user's power. Assessing the luxurious item on the shelf, the hero questions the point of buying it if no blacksmith knows how to work the piece. In another part of the cave, monsters celebrate finding forbidden potions made with the best quality live human hearts. They laugh, finding it crazy that the mountain leader would ban human slavery under the ridiculous pretext of resource preservation. Hearing the talk, the reincarnated warrior finds this protective attitude very suspicious, deducing she's planning a major conspiracy. But Glon turns his focus back to the scared merchant and offers those crushed eyes, demanding a very high price. The merchant tries to scam the boy, claiming he heard rumors about two cruel siblings who profited by gouging out victims' eyes. With a malicious grin, the deceitful creature guarantees he'll pay a fair price for the damaged lot so the newcomer won't cry. With a cold expression, the protagonist ignores the merchant's smooth talk and announces he'll take all the available human stock. Outraged by the audacity, the criminal yells, demanding the money and calling the boy a clueless, filthy pauper. Without raising his voice, Glon menacingly displays the lethal thunder arrow and suggests the merchant pretend the debt has been paid. Completely paralyzed, the demon yields to the armed blackmail as the hero urgently tells the young humans to follow him. The knight hastily pulls the scared children by the ropes, crossing the destroyed courtyard of the illegal market under hateful glares. During the desperate run for the exit, a little boy trips on a stone and scrapes his hands on the rough dirt ground. Whimpering in pain and fear, the kid tries to get up quickly as the rope yanks his scraped arm, without any gentleness. In the market's shadows, the annoyed monsters whisper that they wanted to keep the human for themselves and won't accept this shameful loss. A giant minion smiles sadistically, closing the heavy door and guaranteeing the cocky kid will never leave the hideout alive. But suddenly, a colossal torrent of purple energy shatters the entire wall, disintegrating the screaming, agonizing enemies. The absurd impact crushes the cowardly demons with a devastating pressure that tears their victims' flesh until only ashes remain. The dust settles, revealing the front door completely melted by the wave of lethal heat and dark smoke that infested the place. Maintaining his cold and calculated posture, Glon calmly walks out of the inferno he just created without looking back. The once bustling black market scene is reduced to an absolute carnage of bodies bathed in a gigantic pool of blood. Far from the chaos, the protagonist guides the freed slaves along a path, demanding they keep quiet so they aren't caught. In the blink of an eye, the hero silences a hidden monster by crushing its head and warns the kids he'll rip out their tongues if they cry. Taking advantage of the downed prey, the warrior drains all the energy from the gushing blood to intensely feed his killer ability. Grinning macabrely with his arm full of dark electricity, he celebrates that the cycle of takedowns rolled the score to increase his power. Witnessing the bizarre slaughter, the little boy cries in terror, believing his savior is even worse than the enemies themselves. The children tremble in fear on the ground, absolutely certain they are being led by a malevolent and completely unhinged creature. Observing the terrified hostages, Glon gets frustrated upon seeing the message revealing that the activation of his supreme authority has failed. Staring at the vast horizon with the young ones huddled behind him, the warrior reflects on the dangerous steps of his journey. Handing over a cloth bag, Glon calmly returns the blind boy's belongings. The boy hugs the bag, relieved, quickly agreeing as he holds the valuable object tightly. Walking through the forest, the hero tells the young ones to follow him closely. At this, the girl points to the rope on the ground, confused. Maintaining his cold demeanor, the knight replies that he can't stand seeing people treated like animals on a leash. The trio then continues their journey walking side by side in absolute silence along a rocky path. Later, the protagonist uses magic on a wounded man, who regains his sight and thanks him, shocked that a good demon exists. While healing the boy's eyes, the old man apologizes for the fear they felt before, but Glon quickly tells him to shut up. Curious about the situation, the girl asks why he saved the humans. Simple and direct, the young man says he did it because he wanted to. Hearing that unusual answer, the girl is left completely baffled by the warrior's attitude. With a sharp gaze, he cuts the conversation short, warning that he's busy and telling the little one to be quiet. Halted in a safe cave, the hero observes the humans and thinks about the best way to send everyone away. The atmosphere becomes heavy and uncomfortable, leaving the young girl distressed by the awkward silence that has taken over. Suddenly, she has a brilliant idea to break the ice and relieve the group's tension. Excited, the girl gets everyone's attention and announces she's going to tell a joke. Starting the little story, she talks about a tavern that was giving a discount on drinks to celebrate the harvest festival. Laughing to herself, she tells how a wise guy tried to pull a fast one and just ordered the second drink to get the discount. However, the joke bombs miserably, leaving the protagonist and the other hostages with looks of absolute boredom. Realizing her failure, the young girl freezes in place, still holding her cheerful pose, completely embarrassed by the silence. Just then, a small, unexpected laugh escapes from the reincarnated warrior. He finds the bad joke funny, leaving the old man shocked by his terrible taste. Whimpering, the girl happily hugs the hero. Suddenly, a slithering, menacing sound echoes from the shadows, breaking the lighthearted moment. A dark serpent quickly advances, coiling around the girl's body as she screams in terror from the attack. Giving no chance for escape, the other hostages are also violently immobilized by the hero's magic snakes. Thrown against the wall, the old man panics, not understanding why their benefactor is doing this. Sitting calmly on the bench, Glon crushes their hope, stating that the group is far too naive. Keeping the snake wrapped around the man, the knight warns that demons hide venom and should never be trusted. Displaying pure malice, he decrees that they will all have a painful end to learn the consequence of this careless attitude. Soon after, the humans fall unconscious to the ground as the protagonist reinforces that they need to remember this lesson. Enveloped in an overwhelming aura, the young man faces the awake girl, questioning why she's resisting the lethal venom. Fighting bravely on the ground, the girl points out that his real intention was never to take anyone out here. The young girl deduces everything because no one would tell departed people to remember an important lesson for the future. Firmly, she guarantees the hero only wanted to teach a tactic. Curious, he asks where she gets such certainty. Crying with emotion, The girl frees herself from the snake and affirms that she trusts him completely, because he is a kind monster. As the blind boy wakes up confused, the protagonist sighs in defeat, questioning what the girl wants after all. She runs up excitedly, asking to follow him. Immediately, Glon rejects the idea, saying he doesn't need useless baggage. Full of confidence, the young girl reveals she is a skilled blacksmith and cheerfully introduces herself as Sulla. Upon hearing that familiar name, the warrior freezes in surprise and asks if she is Alexios's granddaughter. With a smile, Sulla confirms the relation, asking if the monster knows her family. The hero reveals that the two are old acquaintances, even remembering holding the girl in his arms as a baby. Glon's mind travels back many years to a bustling blacksmith's workshop. In the memory, the old blacksmith Alexios harshly states that he never works for those who harm innocents. Observing the client closely, the artisan's stern expression changes, sensing something about the young man. Without hesitation, the old man accuses the human of reeking of blood, stating that his talent can track that scent. The knight ignores the offense, explaining that Sister Dia sent him, but the blacksmith tells the boy to leave. The warrior insists, directly asking for the legendary steel weapon forged by the Sect of Mercy. With this information, the blacksmith realizes the young man's connection to the religious order and questions the partnership. Taking a puff from his pipe, Alexios sizes up the boy for a few seconds, reconsidering the situation. Out of respect for his friend, the artisan agrees to take the job, trusting her judgment to deliver the sword. Handing over the sacred statue of the god, Glon asks for Dia's symbol to be used as the blade's guard. The old man strikes the anvil with his hammer, telling the client to be patient because the work won't be done quickly. As the metal melts, the man excitedly comments that he will seek a scholar to bless his soon-to-be born granddaughter. Sometime later, under a heavy snowstorm, the young hero finds deep destruction as he walks toward the village. The houses are ravaged by war, with only silence and the new sword stuck in the frozen ground remaining. Finding Alexios bloodied in the snow, Glon asks about the weapon while the old man protects the baby in his arms. Struggling to breathe, the blacksmith points toward the door, telling the warrior to get the blade himself. The young man holds the colossal sword engraved with the child's name, discovering the artisan's tribute. Pulling his hood against the wind, the knight holds the crying baby and asks where the little one's parents are. The old man painfully reports that beasts called demons attack the village, slaughtering the family by surprise. The human's face darkens with hatred upon hearing that the beasts annihilated everything in their path. It hits him when the young man hears Alexios question if Sister Dia was also taken out by those cruel monsters. Clenching his bruised face, the hero confirms the loss of his companions, fueling an endless rage. The young man laments the cruelty of fate, knowing the little girl will grow up without ever receiving a blessing of protection. With a pained expression, the knight extends his fingers and offers his own impromptu blessing to the orphan. Little Sulla gives a big, comforting smile, accepting that pure gesture of affection. Giant monsters march in the storm as Alexios's last words suggest abandoning mercy. Walking toward the horde with the sword, Glon decrees that healing wounds is an illusory and useless remedy of that religion. Dragging the colossal blade across the ground, the warrior carves his bloody path, sparing no beast. He advances with blind fury against the enemies, vowing to intercept the evil before it threatens more innocents. In a hurricane of aggression, the hero tears through dozens of beasts, shredding demonic flesh in a total massacre. Delivering colossal blows without stopping, he fells one opponent after another, scattering pieces across the ice. Bathed in disgusting blood and overflowing with crushing fury, the knight embodies the true form of terror. Standing atop the mountain of sliced corpses, the young man decrees that complete annihilation is the true mercy. Returning to the present in the cave, Sulla smiles in wonder, telling how her grandfather always recounted those glorious stories. Chattering excitedly, she jokes that the hero looks too young, completely defying the age he should be. Asked about becoming a demon, the protagonist dodges the question, closing his bag and claiming he just takes good care of himself. Curious about his recent past, Sulla sits on the floor and asks how the knight was captured by the demonic race and brought to this rustic place. The hero sighs, saying it's a long story, and assures her he won't return to her grandfather until he forges his ultimate blade. Excited by the idea, the girl suggests she can do the job herself and quickly asks if he thinks she can handle it. Glon affectionately ruffles the little blacksmith's hair, stating that having a great passion is a very good thing, and confesses he's envious of that dedication. Thrilled by the encouragement, the girl vows to do her absolute best to complete her task. Meanwhile, far away, a piece of parchment is left on the grass with a message revealing the mysterious savior's identity. The recently healed human boy wakes up on the forest floor, lazily rubbing his eyes to shake off sleep. Reading the note enthusiastically, the old man shouts for everyone to wake up and announces they were rescued by the legendary vampire knight. The old man is amazed to discover that this quiet hero is a direct student of the maniacal demon hunter, The boy blinks, very confused by all the shouting, and innocently asks if this impressive story is really true. Back in the cave, the protagonist carries an anvil, announcing he has dealt with the trio of enemies and brought the tools. Showing off the finished new workspace, the young girl smilingly guarantees that setting up a simple forge like that was a piece of cake. But she wipes her sweat and laments that the world's only mine for the best material was taken by monsters, making the steel impossible to find. Sighing in frustration, Scylla hugs a tool, complaining that she has all the necessary skill in her hands but lacks the raw material. The warrior then displays a valuable dark ore he picked up earlier, stating that they are very lucky. Tightening the wraps on his arm, Glon reflects that he didn't expect a threat to emerge from the new generation and concludes he needs power, fast. Curious about all the military preparation, the little blacksmith asks where the knight is going. Adjusting his own equipment, the young man coldly replies that he's continuing the hunt, and the scene cuts to the lackey reporting the black market massacre. Soaking in hot water, the leader orders all the bodies to be hung in the square as an absolute warning to the disobedient. The subordinate agrees with a nod and asks how they should go about investigating the one responsible for the terrible attack. Losing her patience, the woman tells the servant to get lost and do his job right, making it clear that it's not her problem. Demanding perfect results, she warns that if breakfast continues to be disgusting, the farmers won't need to stay alive anymore. Sinking her face into the fragrant thermal water, the demoness grumbles that she's craving a lot of high-quality sugar. Far away, some monsters chat around a fire, agreeing that things are getting dangerous, and it's better to stick together. A minion suspects that all this recent chaos is the work of extremely strong rebels from the lawless territories. Hiding in the shadows of the tents, the hero overhears the theory about a very powerful intruder managing to disguise their own strength. Satisfied with the gossip among the beasts, the warrior concludes that pretending to be just a rookie is the most efficient strategy to lure in enemies. Nearby, a group analyzes a bleeding corpse in the dust, lamenting that another military genius has been brutally taken out. Hearing the rumor about geniuses perishing in recent years, Glon denies having offed that guy and suspects there's a new hunter. Staring at the deserted rubble-filled village, the protagonist calmly walks through the streets, questioning if there's another predator in these lands. Walking through an empty alley, the warrior carefully observes the suspicious silence blanketing the simple houses of the region. Glancing sideways, he reflects that he can't imagine who would go to the great trouble of following a mere farm slave. Remaining calm, the hero spots the hidden figure and comically concludes that the target isn't there to steal farming techniques. Suddenly, a colossal punch of pure black energy plummets from the sky in a stealthy and aggressive attack directly against the protagonist. In an immediate reflex, the young man blocks the impact using only his own hand, bathed in the lethal protective serpent shadow. With his eye glowing intensely from adrenaline, Glon is completely shocked to feel the unbelievable defense of that mysterious blow. The dust is kicked up by the wind, revealing a hooded and silent figure observing the damage from atop the thatched roof. The intruder leaps skillfully, escaping the counter attack that completely destroys the humble house's roof in the blink of an eye. Giving no room for rest, the knight lands a devastating kick on a wooden pillar, reducing the structure to splinters. Extremely agile in her landing, the hooded adversary lands on her feet in another village alley, sliding smoothly across the ground. Landing violently in the dust, the warrior faces the target, who calls him stubborn for continuing to attack after taking a heavy hit. Staring with pure, dangerous disdain, the stranger arrogantly states that it seems they overestimated the insolent rookie's capabilities. Pointing their index finger at the young man, the enemy prepares to execute a powerful and fatal magic technique. Wasting no time, Glon charges his own hand, furiously tearing through the air with an explosive charge of wild purple lightning. Directing all that accumulated power, he fires a massive and destructive blast of violent lightning at the hooded figure. The colossal power of the electric magic shatters the simple houses, creating a huge, absurd explosion in the middle of the battlefield. The storm of lightning continues to mercilessly tear up the ground, swallowing the smoke in a devastating display of pure force. The dust settles, and the reincarnated warrior reflects, confused, questioning if the enemy withstood the impact by concentrating her defensive power throughout her body. Gliding quickly through the chaotic sky, the hero finds no corpse of the aggressor, only the tattered cloak flying far away. The peaceful scene of the small village transforms into a trail of deep destruction, bathed in the absolute force of uncontrollable thunder. Wearing her tight, dark outfit, the boss walks among the impaled heads, affirming that she could never match the speed of that intruder. With a malicious and cruel smile, the woman ponders whether to take the head of that valuable prisoner or just turn him into a little puppy. Watching the beautiful sunrise over the mountains, the knight admits that for now, he only has enough raw power to cause superficial scratches on her. Staring at his own hands in frustration, he concludes that he'll need to evolve into a lethal form capable of breaking that tuz, nails armor for good. Focused on the goal, Glon tightens the wraps on his arm, preparing himself physically and mentally to face his next phase of training. Time passes, and the protagonist emerges, wiping away sweat amidst the suffocating smoke and scorching heat of a makeshift rustic forge. Coughing from the stuffy air, he widens his green eye in pure desperation and screams the little blacksmith's name, startled by the high flames. Annoyed by the smoke, the warrior questions why she didn't build a chimney, and Sola smiles sheepishly, saying she forgot in her excitement. Running desperately with the hot piece, the young man yells that the furnace temperature is rising too fast for them to handle. In a brutal motion, a thick iron tongue grips the incandescent ore, shining dazzlingly against the fiery sparks. With great determination and talent, Sola strikes the heavy hammer on the anvil, shaping the valuable divine steel, her face illuminated by the flying sparks. Crouching in a dark corner, the girl plunges the superheated blade into the water tank, raising a thick cloud of hissing steam through the cave. Exhausted from the heavy work, the young girl displays a small, newly made knife, while the knight asks in surprise if that's his order. Immensely proud of her insane effort, she explains that she made a short weapon to match the young man's current lack of strength, praising its balance. Staring at the masterpiece shining with a magical golden hue, the hero recognizes the stunning purity of that newborn Anxi steel. The dazzling, radiant dagger illuminates the shadows of the filthy forge, considered the greatest and most important artisanal creation of the entire era. Satisfied with the incredible final result, Glon praises the girl's talent, who becomes utterly euphoric, jumping with pure joy and emotion. However, the warrior notices that the raw blade has no handle or guard, and the little one sheepishly confesses she ran out of the right material. Not caring for unnecessary luxuries, the young man improvises the hilt by wrapping his bandages around the base and assures her the final shape is very good. Solar excitedly asks if the weapon has been given a grand name, and the hero decides to call it Little Sola, as a simple tribute to its creator. Holding the sacred dagger with unshakable firmness, the protagonist displays a deadly, murderous focus, feeling the hilt slide in his fingers. Immediately, the mysterious dark tentacles react to the blade, proving that his own cursed body desires to swallow the sacred offering. Containing his own predatory instincts, the knight dissolves the shadows and tells himself he needs to wait for the project's proper completion. Completely swept up in the glory of the mission, the excited blacksmith pumps her fist in the air, full of energy, vowing to dedicate herself to the hard work. Sitting at the sunlit entrance, Glon laments that the mountains here aren't high enough to use the full potential of the celestial fall technique. The next morning, little Sola wakes up, stretching in bed. Smelling something wonderful in the air, the girl's mouth immediately starts to water. She looks in awe at the huge tray filled with fresh food on the table. Impressed by the feast, she hears the hero say he learned to cook from a student's parents. The warrior tells her to start eating and says he's going down to get the leader's wine. Walking through the fortress corridors, the young man heads toward the main hall. With an extremely focused gaze, he mentally prepares for the imminent confrontation. In the hall, the mountain leader awaits her meal with a very sadistic posture. The protagonist approaches, offering the huge tray for the boss to inspect the goods. Relaxed on the sofa, the woman praises the servant's cleverness for serving himself up on a platter. She impatiently orders him to bring the drink immediately. Seizing the chance, Glon throws the food at her and lunges in a stealthy and lethal attack. Completely shocked, the demoness recognizes the rare steel blade in the intruder's possession. The hero shoots forward, warning that her luck has run out, and prepares the final blow. But the leader reacts quickly, summoning her gigantic shield to block the violent impact. Reeling from the impact, the protagonist notes it's a defensive seal and decides to test the enemy's resistance. The boss scoffs, stating that a little surprise of this level is hardly to her refined taste. Unfazed, the boy retorts that maybe he didn't put enough honey in the recipe. With that, he unleashes a brutal sequence of electric attacks directly at the golden shield. The massive force of the thunder collides with the defense, sending sparks flying everywhere. Firm in her spot, the woman withstands the heavy assault without yielding a single inch. The knight accelerates even more and delivers a dark assault at extremely high speed. The sacred dagger slashes through the air, striking the unbreakable barrier with full fury. Maintaining the frantic pace, the hero continues to press the defense with dozens of consecutive cuts. A colossal explosion of purple energy engulfs the hall, destroying everything around. The dust settles with the young man sliding back after the violent clash of powers. Protected behind the shield, the leader mocks his recklessness, declaring that his energy will soon run out. Observing the enemy's weapon, Glon halts his offensive, realizing there's a much more efficient way. In a swift move, he stumps hard on the castle's stone floor. Immediately, a gigantic web of purple lightning spreads across the entire surface of the hall. Seeing the electricity take over the floor, the woman calls it a cheap trick. She leaps high, trying to escape the dangerous electric traps set on the floor. The knight explains that the technique creates a perfect insulating layer to combat lightning-type monsters. Advancing in the air, he roars furiously at seeing a demonic thief using the skills he himself taught. Completely confused by her opponent's sudden rage, she asks what the reason for all the stress is. Quickly, the boss spins her body, preparing a piercing charge. A gigantic destructive tornado advances, tearing through the wind toward the boy. Glon blocks the heavy attack using his new holy steel blade with great precision. The demoness finds it pathetic to attempt an assassination using such an obvious opening. Suddenly, mysterious serpent tentacles sprout from the shield, immobilizing the leader's arms. Caught completely by surprise, the enemy is indignant at this dirty trick. Seizing the distraction, the protagonist channels all the resonance power into his lethal dagger. Even tied up, the woman maintains her arrogant pose, questioning if he really thinks this will work. Declaring the warm-up over, the warrior shatters her barrier with a violent crack. Bathed in an overwhelming and terrifying aura, the hero finally announces the start of the real fight. Legend tells that in the past, the hero Ibis faced the great serpent with his bare hands after losing his weapon. Noticing the opening as the enemy swaps weapons, the boy lunges while she curses for reacting too late. The knight executes a clean, deep cut directly into the woman's vulnerable guard. A spray of blood flies through the air, confirming the attack has finally bypassed the impenetrable defense. With a lethal posture, the protagonist coldly celebrates hitting the target dead on. Furious, the leader activates her maximum power, transforming her arm into a colossal golden gauntlet. The gigantic armored fist advances with overwhelming force against the young man. Using the small dagger, Glon blocks the monstrous impact with extreme difficulty. The brutal collision generates a deafening shockwave that destroys the castle floor. Thrown far away, the hero assesses his ruptured organs, urgently needing time to heal. The boss quickly pins him to the ground, mocking his attempt to use joint locks against pure brute force. Quite confident, she twists the boy's arm, stating she is an extremely experienced fighter. Pinning her target to the stone, the demoness confesses she even enjoys a good ground grapple. The woman notices his silent agony, remembering only one person capable of enduring so much pain. Staring at the defeated boy, she thinks it's a real waste to just finish him off so quickly. Trying to turn the tables, Glon uses his legs in a tight chokehold against the enemy's neck. Completely relaxed, she ignores the move and asks if the intruder has ever considered working for her. The young man presses the attack, refusing the offer, and the leader bitterly accepts this rejection. Without mercy, the boss delivers a devastating golden punch directly to the hero's chest. The crushing fist sinks in with maximum fury as she screams, wishing for her opponent's end. A colossal explosion of energy sweeps through the hall, sending rubble flying in all directions. The entire tower structure collapses violently, unable to withstand the raw force of that impact. A massive pillar of light breaks through the clouds, illuminating the entire gigantic skull mountain. The attack creates an absurdly deep crater, sinking entire floors of the fortress into a dark abyss. Floating in the air, the woman notes that only that sacred dagger prevented his body from turning to dust. She lands on the rubble, declaring it impossible for anyone to survive such severe injuries. Just then, a faint holy healing light begins to shine amidst the destroyed stones. Defying logic, the reincarnated knight rises from the ruins, firmly wielding his blade. The silent mountain landscape awaits the outcome of that violent and deadly battle. Suddenly, a new blinding flash explodes at the top of the fortress, indicating the massacre is not yet over. Concentrating all his power into the glowing blade, the hero invokes the second form of his ultimate technique. Shocked, the leader immediately recognizes that powerful attack of the celestial sword falling from the heavens. A devastating phantom lightning bolt strikes the gigantic stone skull of the mountain head-on. Gravely wounded and on the ground, the woman curses the boy, calling him a filthy demon for his audacity. But the assault doesn't stop there, and a new violent charge of lightning mercilessly descends upon the castle. The absurd force of the impact generates a catastrophic explosion that shatters the surrounding structure. The enormous tower completely crumbles, illuminated by the lethal purple energy tearing through the night. Debris falls heavily under the moonlight, reducing the boss's grand castle to ruins. The dust begins to settle slowly in the immense crater left by the absurdly intense combat. Amidst the destruction, the protagonist remains standing, wielding his dagger, visibly worn out. Maintaining his usual cold gaze, he takes a deep breath, awaiting the outcome of that crushing blow. However, the enemy re-emerges from the smoke, admitting she was almost taken out by that insane attack. Holding her injured arm, she reveals that in her 2 years as a demon, he was the first to push her to the limit. A colossal magical aura explodes, revealing a giant, glowing seal taking shape behind the woman. Overflowing with unshakable energy, the leader activates her absorption seal and tells the boy to be proud of this feat. Surprised to hear the name of the defensive technique, the reincarnated warrior finally connects the dots. Completely consumed by fury, the woman advances, displaying sharp claws of pure dark energy. She leaps relentlessly, telling her opponent to take that little pride straight to the underworld. Unable to believe what he's seeing, the knight freezes and lets a familiar name from the old days slip out. The image of one of his former group members appears in his mind with an expression of pure confusion. Upon hearing a term from the past, the leader aborts her charge mid-air and is left completely speechless. She stares at the boy intensely, analyzing the familiar wrappings around his neck. The demoness's mind travels back in time, remembering when the group of heroes met the feared knight. In the memory, the blonde paladin points to the great round mountain on the horizon, finding its shape suspicious. The immense structure rises from the earth, revealing two terrifying red eyes glowing in the dust. A colossal troll awakens from its hibernation, displaying a monstrous form to the curious travelers. The gigantic beast roars to the heavens, its chest overflowing with threatening, boiling magma. The monster lets out a deafening scream, ready to crush the poor human intruders. But the blonde man is surprised to realize that someone just fired the first form of the celestial sword. A beam of divine light pierces the top of the creature's head in an extremely precise and devastating attack. The massive energy tears through the colossus's body from top to bottom, causing devastating damage. Gushing blood everywhere, the giant topples, defeated in a matter of seconds. One of the allies quickly retreats, protecting herself with a golden barrier spell. The beast's fall kicks up a suffocating cloud of dust and violently shatters the stone ground. The troll's body drags across the earth, marking the brutal end of that overwhelming threat. The scene falls completely silent, with the creature's enormous face sunk unrecognizably into the ground. Soon, the sound of heavy footsteps echoes, breaking the silence from between the slain beast's immense teeth. The heroes get into a combat stance, prepared to face any imminent danger. They watch apprehensively and surprised as a silhouette stands atop the gigantic skull. Completely bathed in dark blood, the lone knight pulls his blade from the monster's flesh. With a reddish gaze of pure intimidation, he coldly asks if this useless little group is the supposed promised reinforcement. The paladin doesn't understand the hostility, reminding him that everyone there are allies focused on defeating the emperor. Turning his back, Glon states that they are just tools in the mission and nothing more. The warrior leaps from the corpse, decreeing that keeping a safe distance is the best choice for everyone. Walking beside him later, the blonde man laments that very deep feelings always become a dangerous burden. But the dark-eyed warrior immediately refutes the statement, saying he disagrees with that view. Leaving his companion behind, the young man says he couldn't care less what he thinks. With his face covered in dirt, he maintains his antisocial and closed-off posture to any friendly bonds. Observing the rude attitude, the group's leader asks her allies to forgive their colleague's difficult personality. The blonde man resignedly states that the chances of building a good relationship with the warrior in the future are null. Back in the present in the ruins, the purple-haired woman cries with emotion, recognizing her friend. She tearfully dispels her deadly weapons, unable to contain the tremendous shock of the revelation. With a soft and sincere smile, the protagonist silently confirms his own identity. In a desperate leap, the old teammate throws herself into his arms, celebrating this lucky break. The tight, nostalgic hug seals the unlikely reunion amidst all the fortress's destruction. Confused by the tears, the young man questions why she's crying so much, a departure from the tough demeanor she used to have. Resting her face on his shoulder, the friend confesses she thought she'd never see an ally again in her life. Shaken by the guilt of his failure, Glon laments that if he had been stronger in the past, things would be different. Suddenly, two subordinate demons burst through the door, desperate to know what happened to their boss. However, the minions freeze, catching the unusual scene of the two warriors embracing in the dark. Annoyed by the inopportune interruption, the leader shoos the servants away, yelling at them to get out of her sight. Soon, the battle's adrenaline fades, and the warrior feels the extreme pain of the broken bones in his chest. Worried, the woman extends her hand, activating a comforting green magic over his severe injuries. Sitting on the rubble, she asks if the boy has carried that weight of guilt alone all this time. But Glon quickly cuts the drama short, amicably warning that he doesn't want to hear that old, annoying advice. During the treatment, she whimpers, explaining she used to wear huge armor because she was very fearful and hated pain. Eating by the fire, the hero discovers that his friend was also reincarnated 2 years ago and managed to find their sister Feya. Intrigued by the confusing past, the knight deduces that his hulking colleague ended up changing gender in this new chance. Calmly eating a pie, she replies amused that she was always born in a woman's body. The former armor user displays a genuinely proud smile of her own femininity. The shock of the obvious answer is so great that the protagonist chokes on his food, coughing hard. Completely speechless and breaking into a cold sweat, he freezes, staring at his friend with the face of someone who's been had. Observing his absolute astonishment, the woman is indignant to discover that the boy thought she was a man all this time. The hero puts his hand to his forehead, remembering the giant suit that hid her figure in the old days. Sighing in frustration, he asks if anyone else knew, and she jokes that his ignorance was the source of many laughs. Faya questions why he didn't tell her sooner. The hero retorts, asking why she didn't ask, thinking his friend already knew everything. Trying to process it all, Glon asks to confirm again if this isn't a joke. His friend denies it, reminding him that Faya used to call her Big Sister. Changing the subject, the leader observes the sleeping little Sulla and asks whose child she is. The warrior explains she is Alexis's granddaughter, resting from her hard work. Just then, the woman approaches a wooden barrel and notices some small, rustic carvings stored there with great care. Counting the little figures one by one, she realizes one piece is missing to complete the old group of heroes. A pang of sadness hits the demoness as she perfectly understands the meaning of that absence in the carvings. Facing the young man, she asks with a heavy tone why he hates himself so much after everything that happened. Without avoiding the subject, the knight replies that it's the only way to remember he needs to do better in the future. With a determined look, he makes a silent promise that this time he will annihilate evil and protect everyone. Amused by this heroic pose, his friend lets out a loud laugh, telling him to stop trying to make her laugh. She firmly touches the boy's chest, doubting he can carry such a huge burden all by himself. With a confident smile, the woman assures him he can count on her help when it's time to beat up their enemies. The two old war companions bump fists in a nostalgic greeting, sealing their new alliance. Shaking hands firmly, they reaffirm the unbreakable friendship that survived even after their passing. The scene returns to calm in the makeshift cave as the little girl continues to sleep soundly next to the small wooden sculptures. The three carved figures rest silently on top of the barrel, symbolizing the union that has just been reborn among the heroes. Sitting on the mountainside, Glon deduces that his friend spent the last 2 years controlling the demons while secretly taking out the strongest newcomers. The leader confirms she did it to prevent them from becoming a greater threat, as the current second-generation king is cruel and has abandoned his rule. Completely changing the subject, she mentions there's a small, strange detail that has been bothering her mind recently. Worried, the woman confesses that she sometimes feels her own thoughts being distorted by the killer instincts of her new demonic body. The protagonist understands the situation perfectly, revealing that the dark nature of that race has also messed with his head quite a bit. Curious about the statement, the former teammate asks what exactly has changed in his personality. Maintaining his usual cold and serious expression, the knight claims he has become much calmer and gentler. He adds that he now has far fewer creative ideas for destroying enemies, which makes his friend break out in a classic anime sweat drop. The conversation is interrupted by little Sola, who wakes up curious, wanting to know who the giant lady sitting there is. Charmed by the child's cuteness, the leader excitedly pinches her cheeks, complimenting her adorable little face. Formally introducing the two, the hero reveals that the woman is actually the mage Faya, reincarnated into the body of a powerful demon. Without waiting for an explanation, the woman picks up Sola and tells the young man to pack their things so they can move to a much safer and more spacious basement. A short time later, the trio descends the dark stairs, arriving at the boss's secret hideout beneath the destroyed fortress. Observing the wall covered in notes, the hero praises the vast amount of information she managed to gather over the last 2 years. The intelligence board shows the dangerous hierarchy of the Demon Kings and how power was divided over the generations. Meanwhile, Sola complains to her giant friend, asking not to be treated like a decorative doll. Wearing new fancy clothes, the little girl asks if she looks pretty, even though she finds the outfit not very practical for combat. Faya boasts about her own sewing skills, and the hero confesses he thought she only knew how to make that old, useless grass skirt. Annoyed by the teasing, the woman retorts that their old resources were limited, and that the said skirt had a great beachy vibe. Completing the stylish look, the demoness places a small accessory in the girl's hair, stating that now it's perfect. Suddenly, the knight's attention is caught by a shiny object forgotten amidst the basement's mess. He picks up the immense, beautiful blue magic shell, immediately recognizing the item as the Call of the Sea of Souls. His friend says she got it from a merchant as a toll, but the young man explains it's an ancient artifact from a republic that fell centuries ago. According to the Academy records, the shell allows a person to quickly enter another's soul without much difficulty. Once inside, the visitor can observe all the body owner's past memories from the perspective of a ghostly spectator. The hero suggests using the ancient item to look into the leader's past at the exact moment they all perished in that final battle. He remembers feeling something very strange during his end, but was too weak and losing consciousness to pay proper attention. Handing over the object, Glon asks her to enter his soul to find out if some hidden event caused the group's reincarnation. The woman agrees without hesitation, taking the glowing shell and preparing to start the magic ritual immediately. Excited to discover the truth, the war companion confidently states that they should start the spell right away. She pokes the boy's chest with the tip of the magic shell, but absolutely nothing happens, leaving them both looking foolish in the basement. Examining the artifact up close, the protagonist notices the other half is broken and warns that the piece needs to be whole to work. Somewhat embarrassed, the leader explains that a group of bandits recently looted her supplies, and the other half must be with the gang in the middle of nowhere. Staring at his friend with disappointment, the young man throws it in her face that he tried to teach her stealth techniques in the past. To no avail. He criticizes her terrible assassination attempts, stating that anyone minimally observant would notice those clumsy movements. Whimpering, the woman swears she'll train hard in the future, but the knight loses his patience and tells her to start training that very second. The scene shifts to a large bandit camp located deep within an isolated canyon among the dangerous mountains. Sitting around a fire, the criminals drink and celebrate the abundance of food stolen from neighboring lands that have stopped hunting humans. Nearby, some monsters guard a tied-up female prisoner while grumbling that any crumb of human meat is a profit. The gang's boss hugs the hostage, planning to gather forces until they can return to no man's land and take out the so-called evil dragon. The lackeys arrive carrying 2 heavy boxes of stolen supplies, warning that the material is locked and they'll need tools. The large wooden crates are left on the camp floor, waiting for the right moment to be brutally broken open by the gang. No one there has the slightest idea of the great, silent danger that has just been transported directly into the criminal's base. Squeezed into a tiny space, the knight praises the infiltration plan, but his friend asks him to stop using disgusting metaphors about flies. Thoughtfully, the protagonist suggests attacking everyone at once, but the leader warns that the number of enemies makes it difficult to annihilate them all without leaving a trace. The woman fears that some minion might take advantage of the chaos of the battle to flee with the other half of the valuable magical soul artifact. Listening to the conversation outside the box, they hear the bandits praising the human ballistas for trying to take down the powerful evil dragon. Suddenly, a huge, heavy lackey sits right on top of the box while suggesting using the humans as bait to attract the monster. The chubby monster laughs at his own brilliant plan, wanting to wait for the 2 factions to finish each other off so the gang can easily profit in the end. The demon's weight breaks the top of the wooden crate in a violent explosion, sending sharp splinters flying in all directions of the camp. Completely startled by the bang, the bandit jumps up hastily and is confused to see that the supply box was supposedly empty inside. Taking advantage of the brief distraction, the former war companion uses her lineage technique, immediately activating the dangerous transformation of the ancient serpent. Hidden inside the other crate, the hero opens a small crack in the wood and calls Faya's attention to a very specific target outside. The view from the crack focuses directly on the gang leader walking through the courtyard with the glowing dagger and the subdued human hostage in his stone arms. The boss tells his minions that he's taking a quick trip to the Yuanshan black market to trade the useless merchandise for real weapons. A subordinate shoots down the idea, warning that he heard recent rumors about some tough guy who mercilessly wiped out that entire black market. Suddenly, the bandit leader feels an extremely murderous and dangerous aura forming in the shadows, demanding to know who is hiding there. Visually confirming the target, the protagonist decrees the start of the attack, telling his teammate to crush the rest of the bandits as she pleases. Without hesitating for a single second, Faya bursts from the box, shattering the wood, and lands a brutal punch that destroys the chubby monster's face. Grabbing the bandit by the collar, Faya roars furiously because the minions stole all the good food and left her eating nothing but greens all day. Completely annoyed with the situation, the demona states that this makes her very angry and prepares a brutal punch. In a matter of seconds, the leader annihilates the surrounding criminals and remains standing in the middle of the destroyed camp. The gang's boss stares at the intruder in surprise, complaining that the serpent demon led the bone crushers to their hideout. Using the human hostage as a shield, the monster ironically praises the beautiful job the woman did by invading their base. Just then, the prisoner tearfully begs the hero to save her, revealing she was kidnapped and suffers terrible torture every day. Ignoring the victim's cries, the gang boss aggressively draws his blade and prepares for immediate combat. Surprising everyone, the supposed hostage breaks free and lands a strong kick on the bandit, warning that she was tired of this trash. The human winks maliciously at the knight and asks if the handsome guy is interested in the magic artifact. Holding the glowing blue shell, she taunts that the boy can become her new little toy if he can get the item. In the blink of an eye, the protagonist appears right in front of the woman, exuding an overwhelming aura of purple lightning. The minions are completely terrified when they realize the supposed hostage defeated their leader in a single instant. While crushing enemies with her shield, Faya notices her friend is still stuck in the old habit of completely separating attack from defense. Her friend reminds him that his current talent mark is perfect for integrating defensive and offensive moves simultaneously during combat. Glon understands the advice and warns that advanced web transformation techniques are universal, promising to teach her a few tricks. Faya concentrates her green magic power as the hero asks her not to resist and just feel the venom circulate through her body. Surrounded by the criminals, the demoness hears her friend guarantee that she will discover a new way to operate her talent mark. The warrior warns that he will demonstrate the energy flow only once, and makes it clear that learning depends solely on his friend. A colossal barrier of golden light plummets from the sky, instantly crushing the bandits in a brutal demonstration of integrated power. Satisfied with the destruction she caused, the leader smiles and excitedly comments that the feeling of learning something new is really good. With the blue shell finally in hand, the protagonist puts the artifact away and decrees it's time to head back to the Hideot. Back in the safe basement, little Sola continues to sleep soundly on the table, quite relaxed. Holding the glowing object, the young man warns that the item is fragile and will break after use, leaving only one chance to see the past. Maintaining a firm and confident posture, the former mage tells her friend not to worry about it. Without wasting time, the hero places the shell on his own chest and tells the woman to prepare to start the spell. Immediately, a strong spiral of energy sucks in the surroundings as the ancient magic begins to connect the two souls. The scene changes drastically, and the reincarnated warrior appears standing in the middle of the vast and silent sea of his own soul. With a calm expression, he seriously warns the intruder not to snoop around things she shouldn't be looking at in there. Floating in the dark void, Faya clicks her tongue, doubting there are any great secrets hidden in that place. Suddenly, the water churns and a colossal stone statue emerges from the depths quite imposingly. The demoness observes the gigantic face of the sculpture with great attention, trying to understand its meaning. She realizes it's the god of mercy, but finds its appearance bizarre and mocks the knight's supposed kindness. Noticing her presence, the hero is surprised that he can also enter his own soul, and tells them to start the search right away. Before they move forward, a huge rift of red energy suddenly and terrifyingly tears through the dark scenery. The woman's eyes widen, completely amazed and shocked by the sight of that glowing portal. The flash illuminates the empty space, revealing the magical entrance that holds the crucial memories of the ancient battle. The scene travels to the past, showing the exact moment the knight raised his sword, completely bathed in blood. Walking through the wreckage, the friend marvels that she is witnessing the events that occurred right after her own passing. The nightmare comes to life before her as the warrior brutally rips out his own heart with his bare hands. A massive demonic eye glows in the darkness, revealing the Emperor's voice lamenting the need to use a pathetic emergency plan. A magic circle shatters as the monster activates the absurd ability to reincarnate its own soul into an extremely talented demon. The villain celebrates that his cause will live on, but suddenly panics, shouting that the magic hasn't fully formed. A divine light tears through the dark spell, and the Emperor realizes with frustration that the plan's failure was caused by the actions of that god. Watching the revelation closely, Faya murmurs their old companion's name, starting to understand the loose ends of the story. The painful memory ends, showing the protagonist's lifeless body stretched out in a huge pool of his own blood. The Emperor laments the abrupt interruption of his ritual, confessing he has no idea of the terrible consequences he will face. Though weak, the monster firmly guarantees that the magic will still be enough to keep him walking in the world of the living. Putting the pieces together, the leader panics absolutely, deducing that the great villain also managed to reincarnate somewhere. The former mage flies swiftly through the dimensional rift, warning that the memory of that combat ends at that exact point. Desperate to warn her friend, she lands near the bizarre statue and becomes very confused, not knowing if she is still inside his soul. The surrounding scenery transforms into a horrifying infernal pit filled with hanging corpses in a sea of pure blood and destruction. In the shadows, a familiar and terrifying voice calls to the woman, promising to show her the exact way to get out of that inferno. The dark figure confirms it is the knight, while the girl hesitantly approaches the red pool, trying to get a better look at the silhouette. Immediately, Glon's real voice echoes desperately, telling his friend to cover her ears because that creature is not him. She freezes in pure terror upon facing an abyssal, smiling monster overflowing with darkness in front of her. Reacting on pure survival instinct, the demoness activates her purple aura, preparing to face the lethal threat. Suddenly, a gigantic pillar of energy collides with the ground, tearing through the dark beast in a deafening impact. In his glowing spiritual form, the true hero smashes the creature with a punch and tells the woman to get out of there as fast as possible. Using all his strength, he grabs his friend's hand and violently pulls her out of that dark nightmare in the blink of an eye. The duo returns to reality, panting in the basement, and the leader collapses to the floor, terrified, questioning what that abomination hidden in his soul was. Leaning against the bookshelf, the knight deflects, saying he'll explain the secret later, and prefers to focus on the discoveries she made about the past. His friend recants all the terrifying details of the spell she witnessed, confirming the worst suspicions about the outcome of the Great War. She explains that the Emperor's assimilation ability was received from a third party, revealing that the ancient Demon King had usurped this great power. Worried, the woman declares they need to find and control the villain before he regains his intelligence and destroys the world again. The Board of Notes shows the complex demonic lineage and how the kings vied for control of the race throughout its bloody history. Scratching her head in confusion, the leader remembers another very important detail that left her quite intrigued during the spiritual vision. Staring thoughtfully at the ceiling, the warrior bluntly asks about the whereabouts of their missing former companion. Shaken, Faya confesses she didn't notice what happened to her, as the chaos of the final battle demanded the full attention of all living warriors. The heavy subject is interrupted by Sola complaining of hunger, making the demoness smile, and suggests they prepare a good dinner together. The hero sighs heavily, understanding his friend's hesitation, and warns that lying won't ease the pain of that inevitable truth. Hugging the little girl, the woman's face is overcome with the deep sadness of not being able to give her teammate good news. Closing her eyes bitterly, she whispers, feeling a huge weight on her chest. Not knowing how to reveal the tragic fate of their friend, Glon's mind travels to another sunny memory, focusing on two happy soldiers showing off large fish caught in a quiet river. In the nostalgic scene, the guards chat animatedly near the fire while enjoying a small moment of peace amidst the chaos of war. Suddenly, the hulking figure in heavy armor intercepts the duo, telling them not to advance, while one of the young men asks confusedly for the reason. The conversation continues calmly by the fire, with the leader complaining that the hero can't read the room, while he jokes that's why his ex-wife asked for a divorce. Just then, the protagonist notices a detail on his friend's face and asks how the number that used to be on her left eye just disappeared. Faya calmly explains that every time she takes someone out against her will, a grim count appears on her face. Staring at the starry sky, the mage reveals that the mark only disappears when she can feel true happiness again. The knight smiles, understanding the situation, commenting that their reunion after so many years has finally brought back the feeling of having a home. He praises his companion's sincerity, stating that despite her tough exterior, she cares a lot about others and is a great partner. The demoness points to the sleeping little Sola and comments that the girl's adorable presence wards off sad days and brings much joy. With a soft and affectionate gaze, the woman focuses entirely on her friend's face and affirms that he is also the reason for this happiness. Surprised by the sudden declaration, Glon just returns the gaze, processing the great emotional weight of those sincere words. Both their thoughts soon travel to their missing ally, with the leader lamenting that Soika may have had a very different and tragic fate. The hero's face darkens with a grim and painful expression, accepting that the loss of his friend has become another blood debt on his account. Soon after, the reincarnated warrior stands up and stares at the region map tacked to the hideout's stone wall. Consumed by an uncontrollable rage, the knight smashes the paper with a violent punch, vowing to make the culprits pay with blood. The scene then shifts to the village of Hardstone on the kingdom's border, revealing a place completely destroyed by flames and marked by loss. Amidst the chaos, a centaur monster proudly flexes his muscles and laughingly states that only hard training can strengthen the body. Lying on the blood-soaked ground, a wounded man hugs a desperate little girl to protect her from the massacre. The girl cries out for her father, while the man tries to calm her, promising they will be saved soon. Amused by their desperation, the centaur monster charges forward furiously, announcing he will speed up the slaughter. The father flees, running through a pool of blood with his daughter in his arms, fighting bravely to survive the carnage. Touching the little one's face, he bitterly laments that the first thing she witnessed upon awakening was pure suffering. Relentlessly, the equine beast continues its sadistic pursuit, crossing the destroyed landscape at full speed. Suddenly, the monster freezes mid-stride, feeling a strange pressure, and wonders what is happening there. Crying with guilt, the man apologizes, stating it's all his fault for waking up too late and causing so much pain. In a brutal and merciless act, the father's head is completely destroyed in a grotesque explosion of blood. The little girl is traumatized by the scene, and her eyes begin to glow with an intense red hue. A dark and suffocating aura engulfs the area as the true identity of the former demon emperor begins to awaken in that body. Alone in the reddish pool, the child remains standing and completely still before the decapitated corpse. Staring into the void, the little girl questions with a grim voice why her own creations have become so depraved. Monstrous shadows surround the area as the entity laments that the goal was simply to exterminate targets quickly and without torture. The reincarnated emperor repudiates the beast's sadistic pleasure and declares that this was all a huge mistake, leaving the centaur completely confused. Unleashing an overwhelming power, the little girl invokes the ultimate extinction technique and instantly disintegrates the entire horde of demons. The scene is reduced to a gigantic smoking crater as the entity reflects that it did not expect this outcome from the battle 5 years ago. With a gaze filled with malice, the villain whispers that the reincarnated hero has become someone truly unforgettable. Memories of the warrior's relentless fury surface, recalling the dark inner voice the knight carried deep within his soul. A flash from the past shows the fallen ally lamenting that it was too late to reveal her own feelings. Walking through the destruction, the Emperor ironically concludes that they could have been great friends if there had been more understanding. Meanwhile, a desperate warrior runs toward the village, blaming herself for arriving too late to stop the demonic beasts. Arriving at the blood-soaked crater, the woman finally finds the little girl, alone and standing in the middle of that inferno. In tears, the mother hugs her daughter tightly and begs for forgiveness, crying for not being able to arrive sooner to save them. Drowning in her own pain, the woman continues to apologize endlessly while holding the child in a protective embrace. Over the mother's shoulder, the villain in the girl's body coldly observes the scene, calculating that the people of this world continue to suffer endlessly. The warrior lifts her face, stained with tears and blood, firmly gripping the hilt of her sword with great anguish. Wasting no time, the woman flees, running through the wreckage with her daughter on her back, away from that danger zone. Left behind, the father's decapitated body rests on the stone ground next to a forgotten blade in the dark pool. Hiding her true diabolical nature, the little girl concludes in thought that her great cause of purification can no longer be postponed. Back at the hideout, the protagonist and the leader discuss the complete lack of clues about the new reincarnation of the Emperor's whereabouts. Thoughtfully, the warrior suggests that the current demon queen of silent demise, known as Fenling, might have the answers. His friend reveals she maintains contact with her, stating that the queen detests her own race and uses a power capable of perfectly detecting lies. Assessing the situation cautiously, Glon agrees that this unusual ally is the only gateway to obtaining useful information. Suddenly, the hero's dark instincts question if he's really going to trust demons again, warning him not to forget his real goal. Consumed by a momentary murderous aura, the knight silently vows that his hatred will only end when the entire race is exterminated. Noticing her partner's empty gaze, the mage snaps her fingers in front of him, asking why he's just spacing out. To quickly regain focus, the boy deflects, saying it was nothing and he just got distracted for a moment. The pair walks along a plain at night, with the demoness praising the flat terrain while the hero asks for her plan. Feya bites her own hand to use blood for a spell, announcing she will summon the feared vampire knight to deliver the message to the humans. Scared, little Sola questions if vampires aren't just legends, and the leader confirms she has also only heard rumors about the creature's extreme cruelty. The spilled blood activates a gigantic and complex red magic circle that illuminates the entire dark plane. The summon takes a while to respond, and the protagonist ironically comments that their ally must be rusty from not being called for a long time. Yawning from fatigue, the little girl says she needs to save energy and asks to be woken up only when the creature finally shows up. Very scared, the girl shrinks her shoulders, wondering if the summoned monster will be like the terrifying bats from horror stories. A sinister noise echoes through the silent forest, making little Sola break into a cold sweat and go on high alert. Staring at the flock of bats crossing the night sky, the little girl tries to calm herself, saying it's just her own fear talking. Suddenly, a colossal blade, bathed in fresh blood, appears inches from the girl's face in a brutal manner. Caught completely off guard by the deadly threat, the young blacksmith lets out a deafening scream of pure, absolute terror. In tears, the child runs desperately towards the hero, stammering and begging for him to save her from the imminent danger. The dust settles, revealing a gigantic, armored abomination raising its heavy weapon in the illuminated night. Annoyed by the creature's attitude, the mountain leader warns the monster that she didn't summon him to scare others. The warrior steps forward, emanating a huge dark aura, and tells the so-called vampire to stop messing around and take the situation seriously. Facing the pair with a menacing voice, the creature notes that the only person capable of using that summoning spell perished long ago. With the weapon pointed directly at them, the monster demands to know how the young man learned the advanced technique of dead blood. Feya prepares her magic while the knight assesses that the beast doesn't have the posture of an ally and concludes the big guy is very annoyed with them. Bathed in an aggressive energy, the vampire threatens the two, demanding a voluntary confession before he has to rip the answers out of them by force. Without showing the slightest bit of fear, Glon scoffs at the threat, saying the creature's rhetoric would get a good grade in school. However, the hero's face hardens, and he states with total contempt that the monster has no decency and has become a huge disappointment. Hearing that sermon with an incredibly familiar tone, the immense armored creature freezes in place, recognizing its old master instantly. Maintaining his imposing posture, the hero warns with a dark gaze that student Velen is still failing his class. The immense armored creature freezes on the spot, completely shocked as it connects the dots. The monster's helmet dissolves, revealing the emotional face of the young man who soon recognizes his old teacher, Glon. The young man's mind travels to the past, remembering when he studied in a huge and luxurious academic castle. In the memory, the young white-haired student was being forcefully restrained while begging them not to burn his hand. The coward attacking him was Mulder, a cruel and spoiled hare who taunts, asking the reason for that desperate plea. Crying in pain on the floor, Velen explains that his mother would be very sad to see such a terrible injury. Feigning compassion, the aggressor comments that normal mothers do worry about their children and suffer seeing them hurt. However, Mulder's expression changes, and he furiously yells that he couldn't care less about the boy's family's suffering. Without the slightest bit of mercy, the bully decides to make things worse and announces he's now going to burn the classmate's other hand too. A violent sound echoes through the place as a brutal impact hits the table before the injury could be inflicted. Glon suddenly appears in the classroom, smashing the aggressor's face against the table with one hand while holding a sharp blade in the other. With a murderous gaze, the teacher coldly warns that next time, he'll have the parents collect the kid's remains with a shovel. The spoiled hare tries to break free, cursing the master as useless, finding it absurd to be treated that way by an honorary professor. The response comes in the blink of an eye, with the bully and his minions being brutally thrown out of the castle window, without a second thought. After solving the problem, the knight just turns his back and walks through the corridors, ignoring all the commotion. Desperate to speak with his savior, the student reaches out and asks the professor to wait a moment. But the man continues walking through the crowd of students in the hallway as the young man insists, calling out to him. Seeing that the hero wasn't going to stop, the young man accepts the distance. With a relieved smile and tear-filled eyes, Velen thanks him from the bottom of his heart for the help. Time passes at the academy, and some students are shocked to see the enormous auditorium completely packed. Through the window, they comment that the professor is a true maniacal demon hunter who rarely has time for practical classes. The room was crammed with aspiring heroes who would do anything to hear the combat advice of that legendary warrior. Outside, gossip spreads among the students, admiring the number of important princes who came to watch the class. They laugh, remembering that the 8th prince tried to steal another student's seat and ended up being thrown out by Professor Glon himself. Far away, Velen walks through the garden, feeling useless and wondering what he could offer to repay his master. Suddenly, the boy gets a huge fright as he is violently grabbed. Magic vines trap the young man in the air, and the spoiled hare appears, warning that this is an isolated area where no one will hear his screams. The bully offers to spare the boy's life if he lures Glon into an ambush, but Velen curses him with all his might without hesitation. Annoyed by the immediate refusal, the aggressor's face hardens, and he admits he didn't expect this trash to be so stubborn. Tightening the magic, the coward tells the boy to enjoy the feeling of having his bones slowly crushed while he plans where to bury the body. Agonizing in pain, the student thinks to himself that he needs to stop these thugs to protect the professor at all costs. His vision begins to darken as the pressure from the vines increases absurdly. The young man laments his own weakness for being afraid to train and get out of breath, but suddenly Glon plummets from the sky, shattering everything. Easily cutting the bonds, the knight holds the young man by the collar, praising his stubbornness in not yielding to blackmail. Coughing heavily, Velen panics, warning about the trap and fearfully asking where the aggressors went. Maintaining his usual calm, the warrior points up and calmly says the trio is already on their way down. Soon after, the 3 bandits plummet from the clouds, screaming in total panic towards the ground. The impact is brutal, smashing the bullies against the earth and raising a huge cloud of dust and destruction. Bathed in blood and shocked, the student hears the master joke that now the guy's parents will really need a shovel to collect them. The professor tells the boy to go to class and encourages the use of his dark talent, advising him to turn that fear into the enemy's worst nightmare. With that memory concluded, the young man bowed in deep gratitude in a sunny field, sealing his eternal loyalty to his great savior. After that, the young man even offered to bake a fruit pie for the knight as a way of thanking him for the advice. Back in the present at the ruins, the former student vows to leave immediately to warn the nations about the danger of the emperor trying to steal 2 specific bodies. Confused by the talk, Faya asks who they are talking about, and soon learns the targets are humanity's greatest pillars of strength. The first target is the great king of Ainea, known as the powerful restorer of humanity. The second on the list is the supreme warrior, who leads the Northern Alliance with unshakable strength. The former student laments that the second warrior has retired, but concludes it's normal for the professor to be so interested in the only man who defeated him in direct combat. Ending the chat, the reincarnated knight tells the young man to leave with urgency before the villain gains too much time to act. With his enormous red wings spread, Velen accepts the important mission and leaps into the skies at an absurd speed. The old ally cuts through the dark night like a true comet of blood, disappearing over the horizon. Waving excitedly, the mage celebrates that they can now look for the Emperor's reincarnation peacefully without worrying about internal threats. The next day, the pair walks along a dirt road while planning to get good horses and ceramic pots for the long journey. Exuding pure evil, Glon declares he will rip off the Emperor's arms, eyes and tongue and stuff him inside a clay jar to avoid danger. The bizarre plan includes eternally healing him just enough to live like a worm, making his friend thankful he's not the story's great villain. Meanwhile, at the cavalry camp, two soldiers gossip about a rookie who died in a fight against the Bone Crusher's boss. A brute scoffs at the draw and laughingly guarantees he would easily take out the leader to claim the throne if he had the chance. The gossip immediately ends when the soldiers panic, warning that the scary rookie has just arrived. Trying to maintain his composure, the bully gets off his horse, claiming he's not just any trash, and charges, thinking he'll beat the boy. In the blink of an eye, the monster ends up thrown to the ground and breaks into a cold sweat. Wondering if there's still time to beg for his life, the protagonist smashes the guy's head against the stone wall without the slightest bit of mercy, and without breaking a sweat. Using the defeated body as a step, the hero calmly climbs onto the horse's back. Just then, a commotion starts in the camp, and the guards tell everyone to make way for the arrival of Lord Desert Tooth. The scrawny vice chief announces loudly that the great mountain leader will be absent for a long time. Eating an apple, the pale demon tells the lackeys to prepare supplies because he wants to throw a surprise farewell party for the boss. Observing the pathetic scene, the knight concludes that this noisy bootlicker will end up exposing Feia's movements if left unchecked. Nearby, some monsters gossip, complaining that the leader is a useless wimp, and they only bow down because the boss protects the coward. The Lord overhears the conversation and punishes the gossiping soldier, demoting him to a messenger forbidden from touching weapons from now on. Analyzing it further, Glon understands that keeping a fearful insect in military command is a great, cheap strategy to stall enemy troops. Feia sneaks up and agrees with the young man, stating that throwing such a grand party goes against the policy of conserving resources. Hearing the criticism from two random servants, the vice chief spits out a piece of fruit, offended, and asks if they want to teach him his job. With a scary smile, the Lord demands reverence and claims to be benevolent enough to give the disrespectful brats a second chance. Maintaining his typical icy demeanor, the reincarnated warrior listens as the pale creature demands he kneel to be forgiven immediately. Feigning concern, the vice chief asks them to wait a moment, claiming the ground is too hard and the boy might hurt his forehead when bowing. To humiliate the newcomer, he orders a minion to throw a shovelful of horse manure right in front of the hero with a sadistic smile on his face. The pale monster furiously screams, demanding the boy kneel at that very moment. Amused by the situation, the other lackeys comment that they're about to watch a great show. Completely annoyed, the Lord approaches Feia and threatens to tell the boss everything if she doesn't bow. He warns that the leader's fury could finish her in an instant, but offers to beg for mercy on her behalf. The demon then touches the hero's shoulder and scoffs, asking if he's gone mute from fear. Arrogantly, the beast claims he'll help him wake up properly and tells him to lie on the ground. Wasting no time, an incredibly fast and heavy kick rips through the air toward the aggressor. The brutal impact sends the pale lord flying, catching him completely by surprise in front of everyone. Falling face first on the ground, the coward eats dust while the minions are shocked by the bizarre scene. Feia assumes her imposing form as the mountain leader and coldly questions what the vice chief is doing there. Still on the ground, the lackey points at the boy, demanding the brat be severely punished for disobeying orders. His voice overflowing with hatred, the monster screams at the hero, warning that his life is now over. Immediately, the boss's heavy boot strikes the subordinate's face with great force, forcing him to kneel. Humiliated in the dirt, the demon begs for an explanation while Glon just watches in silence. Bathed in a huge, threatening aura, the woman warns that if she hears one more peep, he can start preparing his own coffin. The leader decrees that from now on, the lackey can only stand up when the boy is completely out of sight. Glon says there was no need for such exaggeration, while the guards whisper that the newcomer must be a powerful big shot. Bleeding in the dirt, the vice chief panics, realizing he offended the wrong person and ruined his future in the army. Soon, the pair of friends prepare to leave on horseback, using the excuse of properly managing the neighboring territories. The knight comments that the Queen of Silent Demise hates the Emperor, believing she will help if they explain the situation. Feia agrees with the idea, stating that for now, it's the only viable option to avoid drawing attention. Riding towards the sunset, the two heroes continue their journey discreetly toward the great demonic court. That same night, the scene shifts to the imposing capital of the Eternal Court, shining among the clouds far away. Inside the dark tower, a serene voice celebrates that the demonic race has finally completed the first step of the Great Reform. The imposing Demon King Shu explains that killing tools cannot rule the world, as emotions are the foundation of civilization. Gathered at a huge round table, he proposes the next step, citing that important humans are treated as gods after their passing. The colossal king in golden armor immediately supports the bold decision without a second thought. With a grim and dark aura, the Lord of Cruelty coldly states that he also has no objection to the established plan. Displaying his large, thorny horns, the King of Desolation agrees, saying his opinion doesn't matter anyway. However, the Queen of Silent Demis asks with boredom why they called her there, just to be the wet blanket of the meeting. Trying to calm everyone down, Shu warns that he understands the Queen's position and won't force her to cut ties with the past. Maintaining a very diplomatic tone, the white-haired lord argues about the urgency of the world reformation process. Completely out of patience for that speech, Fenling stands up from the table and excuses herself to leave the room. The woman walks out alone through the huge door while the leader just sighs and tells the meeting to proceed normally. Time passes, and the horses gallop at high speed, kicking up a lot of dust on the dry dirt road. The protagonist and the leader cross an extremely dangerous path on the edge of a giant cliff in no man's land. Focused on their great mission, they advance through the canyons without stopping to rest, heading toward unknown territory. Meanwhile, the vampire knight tears through the skies like a flying comet, traveling without sleep to warn humanity. The huge, winged former student finally approaches the great walls of the human kingdom's restoration capital. Inside the beautiful, illuminated palace, an old human king receives his counselor and asks him not to be so formal at dinner. The white-haired warrior silently analyzes Emperor Hoya, noting that this is the first time he's seen him in person. He recalls the rumors about the ruthless monarch who ascended the throne with blood on his hands, and wonders who he really is. Calmly eating a bowl of soup at the table, the old man recognizes him without fear as the feared vampire knight. Wiping his mouth with a clean cloth, the king praises the young man and regrets not having attended his military appointment ceremony in the past. Showing great hospitality and calm, the old monarch points to a chair and amicably invites the monster to dinner. Maintaining a rigid military posture, the warrior praises the great king's honest sincerity in treating his subordinates there. He then orders the royal historians to urgently note the emperor's excellent behavior in the kingdom's official records. Already seated at the table, Velen hears the old man joke that the counselor always criticizes him, finding the young man quite different from what the rumors said. The old man takes another spoonful of hot soup and calmly asks for the full report on the Demon Emperor and the 5 heroes. Straight to the point, the vampire lord warns that the king must avoid taking any lives to not risk being assimilated by the hidden villain. The monarch stops eating and reveals that he sent his powerful ally to a distant island almost 4 years ago, using retirement as an excuse. Without losing focus, the old man says he will send a secret agent to quickly deliver the message of danger to the isolated warrior. The former student stands up from the table, announcing that a spy infiltrated in the demon's territory has just returned and requests an audience. The king lazily complains that it's nap time and suggests the counselor himself take the lord to rest in the luxurious guest room. Walking through the bright palace corridors, the human praises the so-called spy, stating that the boy is very competent in his dangerous work. Suddenly, a huge rhinoceros monster falls to its knees on the stone floor and reports bringing vital information about the enemy troops. Slowly raising his gaze, the huge beast is absolutely shocked to come face to face with a feared vampire knight walking freely there. Noticing his subordinate's great surprise, the counselor breaks the tension and decides to formally introduce the two right away. He points to the muscular monster and reveals that this is his best secret spy, making the situation even more strange and unusual. Ignoring the Pale Lord's intimidating presence, the rhinoceros warns that the enemies are gathering a gigantic army to attack soon. The human says the emperor had to urgently organize the troops and asked him to escort the tired guest directly to his room. Velen scoffs, finding it bizarre to trust a demon helping humans, but the spy retorts that it's just a very well-paid job. The rhinoceros firmly argues that in this chaotic era, the weaker ones need to find rich allies and profit to survive. Displaying 2 solid gold bars with a big smile, the monster ironically asks if the young man can guess which one was made by humans. Already seated in the comfort of the large room, the vampire concludes that the current war is not his problem, and just ignores the other's provocation. The big guy quickly pockets the money and confesses he just wants to save up some cash to escape this inferno and live in peace on another continent. Amused by the situation, the white-haired lord comments on how ironic it is for a demon to be selfish and peaceful amidst so many killing machines. Annoyed by the unnecessary moral lecture, the rhinoceros crosses his arms and says he'd rather be greedy than pretend to be a righteous hero. He mentions that the old Master Glon was a true example of purity, always fighting to protect the innocent from evil without hesitation. However, the beast raises a cruel doubt in the conversation, asking if the warrior was really good or just fought to satisfy his killer instinct. The spy questions with tremendous malice what great dark secrets that supposed savior hid in the depths of his own empty heart. Continuing the dangerous provocation up close, the big guy suggests the knight might have been lying to himself the whole time. Hearing his beloved master offended in such a way, villain explodes in pure fury, summoning dozens of blood energy swords around him. With a completely lethal and icy gaze shining with hatred, the young man warns the monster to think very carefully before opening his mouth to spew nonsense. Sweating coldly with the large blades at his neck, the coward backs down, saying it was just a silly theory and that the hero used to help him beat up bullies at school. The rhinoceros spy continues his taunt, questioning what the hero would do if he had to choose between the greater good and his selfish desires. Far away, the sun illuminates the vast and silent no man's land as two horses rest and drink water peacefully at a small lake. At the camp, Glon fills his canteen and comments with relief that they haven't encountered any bandit groups blocking this isolated road. Faya tells her partner not to let his guard down, advising Sola to learn some self-defense techniques in case they are attacked. The little girl excitedly agrees, reporting that her forging speed has already surpassed her grandfather's and feeling that someone is secretly helping her. The leader warns that geniuses can go their whole lives without discovering their talents if they don't explore them, deciding to teach the basic application right there. The knight explains that people with a talent mark generate energy all the time, spreading this power through their bodies invisibly. Focusing his gaze firmly, he details that the basic application is divided into mobilization, release amplification, and energy shaping. Wasting no time, the reincarnated warrior demonstrates the technique in practice, releasing a strong dark aura around his own body. He describes that mobilization channels energy from calm areas to strengthen crucial points of the body, making them as hard as stone. Then the hero points out that it's also possible to spread the power externally to create a kind of hollow defensive surface. Remaining calm, Glon recalls that the former demon from whom he stole the talent used this exact technique to deflect attacks. The young man instructs Sulla to learn mobilization first, telling the girl to feel the energy flow and concentrate it in her own hands. The girl raises her hands impressed and excitedly announces that she's finally feeling the magic power begin to circulate. Holding the hammer with the tool glowing intensely, she concludes with wonder that it's much easier to swing the weight now. The protagonist explains that the girl can use this mobilization to enchant the hammer, revealing that many sword techniques use this principle. However, the knight makes it clear that the effect on external objects causes rapid wear, with rare divine steel weapons being a major exception. With the theory lesson over, he declares they will train defense first to ensure her survival in dangerous situations. Determined, Sulla holds a small sword and trusts that her reinforced defense will withstand her friend's weak blows without a problem. Immediately, the hero charges in with a swift cut and coldly warns that he'll heal her broken hand after the impact. The young man's sword collides brutally with the girl's block, generating a strong spark of glowing energy at the point of impact. The absurd force of the attack throws the little blacksmith back violently, making her skid across the rocky ground. At the last second to protect herself, small guardians of pure golden energy materialize over the little girl's closed fists. Observing the little figures on her own hands, the girl beams and states that humans always awaken something in a critical moment. She excitedly explains that she used the energy to create those defensive forms and quickly asks what the next step of the magic training is. The warrior warns that amplifying power as a beginner is dangerous and can cause cardiac arrest, suggesting she focus only on release and shaping. Focused on the exercise, the young girl extends her palm to try and release the raw power directly into the air without using an object as a base. A blinding golden light fills the camp and wakes up leader Faya, who observes the girl's spell, quite impressed. The mage approaches excitedly and tells the girl to trust her own imagination to give form and fully materialize that hidden talent. With this instruction, Sulla manages to summon dozens of small golden figures that march cheerfully across her outstretched hand. Excited by the progress, Foya suggests putting more energy into the summons to see if they have automatic combat functions. Immediately, the Golden Guardians raise large magic shields on the little girl's arms, assuming a solid guard posture. The young girl celebrates having awakened an acquired talent mark, while the warrior explains that a lot of effort allows one to reach this rare level of power. Suddenly, a large flock of wild birds takes flight in the distance, breaking the silence and tranquility of the mountains. Noticing the abnormal commotion in nature, Glon tells them to put out the fire quickly because something dangerous has scared the animals nearby. The scene shifts to the arid desert, where a small group of humans struggles to advance, carrying a heavy stretcher. The fearful soldier thanks his lucky stars there are no pursuers, but the captain tells him to shut up so he doesn't expose their identity. With torn clothes, they transport a green-haired warrior who is completely unconscious and very gravely injured. Hiding behind the rocks, The two heroes observe the group and find it strange that these humans would dare to invade demonic territory. From her familiar face, the knight recognizes the unconscious woman as Yvette, the ninth princess of the human kingdom of Ainea. He remembers the woman is extremely ambitious in the political scene, but doesn't understand how a strong warrior ended up so badly hurt. Exhausted by the extreme heat, the soldiers decide to stop and rest while a black viper stealthily approaches a package. The captain curses in frustration, complaining that his family spent a fortune for him to participate in this failed operation. He desperately drinks the rest of the water from his canteen, lamenting the fact that the mission went completely wrong and reduced them to fugitives. Nearby, the snake slithers on the hot sand and sniffs a blood-soaked leather package containing a severed demonic arm. Observing the limb lying on the sand, the warrior and the leader immediately conclude that the knights are carrying something extremely dangerous. The mage asks if her friend intends to use the arm of that big demon to force a new and powerful evolution in his own body. In the hero's mind, the dark tentacles writhe violently around a dark aura, desiring to devour the macabre piece of flesh. Meanwhile, the soldier whimpers, begging for forgiveness for being a useless scout and failing to prevent the princess's serious injuries. The captain slaps his colleague and tells him to stop the drama, stating that the real mistake was that the privileged information completely failed. Outraged, the recruit retorts that it's not his fault if the informant's exclusive contact provided incorrect data about the enemy. Out of patience for more excuses, the commander abruptly pulls the stretcher's rope and orders the package with the arm to be brought closer. Taking the lead of the grueling march, he turns his back on the team and resumes the walk through the scorching desert. Displaying false courage, the captain arrogantly proclaims that an honorable knight of his kingdom never gives up on a mission halfway through. Suddenly, the group's leader stops, confused, and questions how the young mage knew there was a water source just ahead of them. Before receiving any answer, a loud cough draws everyone's attention to the stretcher on the dry dirt ground. The fearful soldier panics upon seeing the situation rapidly worsening and screams the princess's name in pure terror. The woman expels a large amount of blood from her mouth, agonizing from the deep and lethal wounds in her weakened body. Desperate, the captain orders the little girl to use the healing spell of the god of mercy immediately to try and save the noblewoman. In tears, the little mage tries to activate the healing light in her hands but cries, saying she spent all her energy in the last battle. Noticing the approach, the fearful soldier quickly draws his crossbow and points the weapon, trembling in terror at the mysterious intruders. Glon and Faya walk calmly through the desert, emerging from the shadows without showing any concern for the small group. In absolute panic, the archer yells a warning that they are members of the demonic race and fires his weapon immediately. With a single finger, the leader blocks the arrow in mid-air and disdainfully warns that her faction does not attack humans without clear provocation. Displaying a bright green healing aura in his hands, the reincarnated hero approaches, offering a favorable deal to save the princess. The knight demands all information about the situation of that severed arm in exchange for the healing magic needed to save her life. Seeing that the noblewoman doesn't have much time left, the captain gives in to desperation and accepts the enemy's proposed terms. Immediately, the protagonist crouches near the stretcher and concentrates his powerful recovery energy on the unconscious woman's injuries. The princess coughs violently, expelling a large jet of blood and venom as her body reacts aggressively to the strong magical treatment. Thinking the leader has been poisoned, the commander loses his mind, grabbing the boy by the collar and yelling, demanding to know what he did. Maintaining a deadly and completely icy gaze, Glon just warns that the useless human is making too much noise. In a quick move, the hero throws the soldier to the ground by the neck and advises the newly healed woman not to make any sudden movements. Still very dizzy and weak, Yvette regains consciousness, sitting up on the stretcher while trying to understand the miracle that just happened. The little mage is amazed and frighteningly notes that this absurd level of healing rivals the powers of the Lord of Desolation himself. Ignoring her own weakness, the princess smashes the captain's head, ordering the brute to apologize to their saviors immediately. The princess expresses her gratitude, noting they can communicate normally, just like the demon Lord Lemmersdorf. Maintaining his cold demeanor, Glon warns that now it's her turn to deliver what he wants. Yvette hesitates in silence, unsure if she should reveal the confidential information. The protagonist reminds her that their companion Lilo promised she would talk, guaranteeing to help with the payment if the price is fair. Visibly uncomfortable, the woman finally reveals that the matter is about that severed arm. The knight quickly cuts her off, warning that this is completely impossible. Impatient, he suggests she let her own subordinate explain the situation. The soldier steps forward, warning that the demoness cannot know this, as it is a matter of extreme importance to humanity. Just then, the hero approaches the princess, offering anything else in exchange. A strong green light envelopes the woman's body as the healing magic continues to work on her. Displaying an intimidating aura, Glon demands to know the location of Galong's arm, or she will watch her subordinate perish from poison. The captain is shocked to realize the lethal threat against his own life. Yvette is startled as the boy holds the human, claiming the poison only causes weakness, and that he's just bluffing. The hero whispers in the captain's ear, asking how he will explain the princess's demise to King Hoya. Desperate with the blackmail, the soldier panics completely, not knowing what to do. Yvette tells them to stop, stating it's better to go out with honor than to submit to this humiliation. The captain asks her to ignore the boy, but the princess firmly wields her sword. Leaning on the blade, the noblewoman warns that she will regain her power soon, and that the enemy is the one who should be worried. Feya questions if she is sure about that, acknowledging that the royalty of Ainea truly has no cowards. The mage comments that her subordinates are only holding on through sheer willpower, making the captain give in. The soldier quickly confesses that the severed arm is under the control of a lord. He reveals that the target is the great warlord Jir. The warrior explains that this monster was a direct confidant of the cruel first-generation demon king. After the fall of his old master, the beast became a bandit, wandering through various places, afraid of being pursued. The spy details that the team obtained secret intelligence confirming the possession of the artifact. The princess's intention was to recover the hero's remains to boost the human army's morale. However, the mission went wrong because the monster had already fused the arm to its own body. The creature's strength surpassed all expectations, catching the group by surprise and gravely injuring the princess during their escape. Glon understands the report and quickly asks for the enemy's exact location. The captain informs him that the target is resting in the ruins of Mud Cow City before heading to the Court of Silent Demise. Feya ponders that they will need to come up with a very clever plan to steal the item from that powerful warrior. The human yells, demanding they heal the princess immediately, since he provided all the information. Fulfilling his part of the deal, the protagonist snaps his fingers to nullify the effect of his magic power. The knight calmly lowers his hand as the dangerous energy dissipates into the air. Yvette slowly stands up, reassuring the captain, and asks Feya to hold her sword. The noblewoman bows her head, apologizing for the confusion, admitting she shouldn't have tried to be so clever. Annoyed by the manipulation, the soldier curses the boy, calling him a despicable beast. The hero ignores the insult, and just says it was a simple poison from which she would recover very quickly. Sula watches the scene, frightened, while the captain whimpers, wondering if he will face military punishment for his actions. Displaying his typical coldness, Glon tells the soldier to get up off the ground. The young man absolves the human of guilt, taking full responsibility for not explaining the situation properly. The princess advises the group not to worry about the arm, as they are no match for the lord, suggesting they get some good rest. Suddenly, the captain goes on high alert, warning of enemies approaching quickly. A swift monster cuts through the desert landscape, running at full speed and kicking up dust. The soldier yells for everyone to form a defensive line and prepare for the imminent attack. 4 bandits appear on the dune, celebrating having found the group sought by the Great Lord. The criminal gang's leader says the boss only wants the heads, so they can keep the valuable pelts. Yvette wields her sword, telling everyone to hold their position until she recovers, and the boy immediately agrees. Analyzing the defensive formation, the monster praises the enemy's tactic, knowing they will pick them off one by one if they separate. The frog criminal tells his brother not to worry, guaranteeing he will wear down the prey first. Bathed in a green aura, the demon tells the targets to pay close attention to his question. He poses a riddle about a rooster born from a common egg that can speak human language, asking about the creature's origin. Activating his talent seal, he warns that their power will be continuously drained if they answer incorrectly or remain silent. The humans panic, feeling their energy slowly disappearing, terrified of meeting their end this way. The captain doesn't think twice and fires his crossbow, stating he will destroy the monster's main body right away. The princess tries to stop the rash attack, but the bandit easily dodges the arrow, mocking the soldier's slowness. The gang leader praises the lackey's performance and orders a full-scale attack on the weakened group. The monsters charge with full fury, ready to tear the targets apart in a brutal assault. The reincarnated hero analyzes the situation from afar with a dark and very focused gaze. In the blink of an eye, Glon advances like a purple lightning bolt, cutting through the enemies with a devastating attack. Bathed in a violent purple aura, the knight stands surrounded by the shattered demons. The princess is completely shocked to witness the brutal strength of this mere farm boy. The protagonist continues the massacre, slicing through more criminals, and tells the noblewoman to consider it a gift for their alliance. Finishing the job, he guarantees that if the two groups cooperate, the valuable arm will belong to them. A colossal explosion of dark energy sweeps the scene, disintegrating the entire horde at once. With all that bloodshed, The warrior's power advances directly to the third seal. Wearing his imposing dark armor, the hero notes that this form still has room for improvement. A vet raises a huge curtain of magic sand, telling the boy to ask the question quickly. Behind the barrier, the frog demon repeats the riddle about the four bone brothers, waiting for the correct answer. The countdown continues as the young man walks toward the enemy with absolute calm. Without flinching, Glon coldly states that the name of the fourth brother is Fourth Bone. The bandit scoffs, calling his opponent dumb and revealing that the correct answer was Pinky Finger. Seizing the distraction, the hero activates his thermal eye ability to track the target with precision. In an explosive leap, he unleashes the thunder technique, advancing like a relentless lightning bolt against the monster. The purple blade cuts through the air in a lethal impact, instantly decapitating the riddle frog with no chance for defense. The princess laments that they are lost. The captain refuses to accept the end, whimpering about the money he hasn't spent. Just then, Yvette announces she can still use her talent seal. Faya tells the princess to rest a bit and immediately unleashes her own combat form. Summoning her celestial body talent seal, the leader assumes a gigantic stone form. The enemy just scoffs, asking who the ant in front of him is. Wasting no time, the mage delivers a brutal blow, smashing the bandits to the ground with her colossal strength. Glone warns that enemies are approaching, attracted by the noise. He reminds her of what he taught: if a target seems useful, she should use that advantage without a second thought. Far away, the enemy troop panics at the sight of the giant, and the commander orders all units to fire quickly. Seizing the opening, the leader grabs the captain and hurls him through the air with all her might. The human soldier hits the archer's head, unlike a bowling ball, destroying the enemy formation in a violent impact. With the path clear, the imposing stone giant raises a colossal sword, ready to finish the job against the fortress. A devastating slash tears through the scene, slicing through the defenders without giving them any chance to react. Agile and lethal, the reincarnated hero advances, destroying barriers with his relentless dark energy. Just then, the protagonist turns his head, sensing a dangerous movement coming from the direction of the setting sun. Flying against the sunlight, a winged creature approaches, tearing through the skies of the arid desert. The warrior duo watches the beast land, kicking up dust, preparing for the new threat that has just arrived. The mage comments on the brutal fame of that region's evil dragon. The young man thinks the beast doesn't want to fight but advises extreme caution. Resuming the conversation, the princess agrees to the alliance, stating that the duo's monstrous strength will be very useful on the mission. The hero seals the deal to face Jir together and split the arm in half, a proposal the noblewoman accepts without hesitation. The scene shifts to the night camp by the lake, while the boy secretly plans to steal the entire piece at the first opportunity. Sitting near the fire, little Sulla hands food to the leader, who devours it eagerly after the combat. The group enjoys the moment of peace in the desert to recover the energy lost in the last battle. The princess tells the soldier to stay alert for a possible betrayal by the demons. She stands up to talk while he vows total focus. Noticing her approach, Faya alerts her friend. The knight observes little Sulla and curiously asks if the human is their slave. Nearby, the soldier laments negotiating the hero's remains. The girl comments on the immaculate knight, and the human agrees, praising his idol. Fanatically, the captain boasts that his handsome face can't have scars, wanting to be as flawless as the legendary Merevek in fights. Interrupting the bootlicking, the reincarnated warrior approaches, asking to try the famous cheese from the human's homeland. Savoring the food, the hero feels homesick. The soldier cries, grumbling that his mother bought that and it was very expensive. Startled by an intruder, the captain jumps back, screaming in terror, not understanding who just appeared. The human retreats with his crossbow in hand and asks, completely confused, if the mysterious figure in front of him is a monster. With a calm smile on his face, illuminated by the fire, the blue-haired man calmly confirms he is of the demonic race. Trembling with fear, the archer turns to Glon and desperately asks if this smiling guy is his friend. The entire camp falls into absolute silence, staring at the mysterious intruder who suddenly appeared without making a sound. Maintaining a serene expression, the enemy draws his longsword from its sheath, preparing to act under the moonlight. As swift as water, he unleashes his fluid sword technique, brutally slicing off the archer's fingers in the blink of an eye. The soldier screams in agony, clutching his mutilated hand, while the little girl is shocked by the sudden violence. The princess freezes, recognizing the flowing water sword technique, and the protagonist's eye widens in complete surprise. The man walks into the darkness, revealing his true identity as Merevek, the famous immaculate knight and fallen hero. A chilling air fills the desert as the legendary swordman faces his victims bleeding on the soft sand. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Yvette wields her blade, assuming an extreme defensive posture to survive. The corrupted knight politely announces that he has come to capture the princess, following direct orders from his new master. On the dirt ground, the delicious human cheese lies, stained with blood next to the soldier's freshly severed fingers. Believing it to be a copycat demon, the woman assesses his absurd strength and immediately begs for Glon's help. Maintaining his coldness, the boy refuses to help, claiming there must be a misunderstanding, and suggests they negotiate first. Walking forward, the reincarnated warrior faces his former teammate in a tense, silent reunion. The protagonist focuses intently on the blue-haired man's face, noticing the deep damage to his old friend's body. The fallen knight smiles, his face scared, commenting that he already suspected who owned such a murderous aura. Merevech soon recognizes his old allies, complimenting the mage's giant size before noticing something very bizarre. Feya rolls her eyes, commenting that their terrible judgment proves they are like true blood brothers. The princess yells, warning them to be careful, but Glon doesn't wait and launches an attack against the enemy. The impact occurs and the swordsman blocks the charge, believing the boy faked the conversation just to attack him by surprise. Summoning the seal of the night dragon's soul, the blue-haired monster complains, wanting only to complete his mission in peace. The hero counters the magic aggressively, telling the fallen knight not to get in his way under any circumstances. During the brutal exchange of blows, Merevech blames the boy for the scars on his face and his miserable condition. Overflowing with frustration, the former idol finds his Camaculata, fame pathetic as he displays the marks of defeat on his face. Completely enraged and yelling loudly, he holds his war companion responsible for all the misfortune in his life. Summoning her massive shield, Feya intervenes in the fight, telling her crazed friend to calm down immediately. With an ironic smile, the swordsman backs away from the shield, questioning how he could possibly be calm in this absurd situation. Agile in the air, he unleashes his lethal flowing water technique, guaranteeing he only needs to follow his current master's orders. The hero advances through the slashes, noticing the brainwashing in his former ally. He bitterly concludes he has no other choice here. Feya appears with her fist charged with glowing energy and warns that she's going to beat him until his sanity returns. The blow lands, but the enemy activates his white mist mirage, arrogantly warning that his mind has always been very clear. The leader's crushing fist passes through the false image, shattering the mist mirage in a useless impact against the ground. The hero praises the use of light to hide the body and tells the princess to get close quickly, because she is the main target. Wasting no time, the reincarnated warrior focuses his energy into his eyes and activates the lethal thermal vision to track the enemy. Appearing out of nowhere, the blue-haired knight unleashes a powerful cage of fire mixed with his flowing water technique. The fiery circular attack completely envelopes the princess and her human allies, trapping them in a hot cage. The boy deactivates his magic, noting that the enemy prepared that intense heat just to nullify his thermal vision in the battle. Facing the high flames, the knight suggests the mage test that new and dangerous defense technique she's been training. Uniting their powers, the leader summons the impenetrable shields of dawn, while the protagonist spreads his network of lightning. Inside the trap, the little one tries to heal the injured archer but cries in despair, unable to focus due to the brutal heat. Suddenly, the enemy blade slashes through the air toward the little girl, who screams in terror as she sees her end approaching. The blue villain coldly warns that he only cut the soldiers' hands to spare innocent lives, demanding they don't waste the warning. Just then, the absolute blockade of golden shields closes the siege around them, trapping their escape amidst the destructive flames. Trapped in the perfect barrier, Merevech praises the spell. The captain is shocked to finally recognize his idol's face up close. Indignant, the human spits insults, saying a monster could never be the legendary hero, and the swordsman finds this audacity amusing. Completely loyal to his former hero, the soldier yells that he wouldn't be a worthy knight if he let this great offense pass. Facing the boy, Merevech asks if he knows why he fought his whole life for the title of first knight, but was always called the second. The swordsman assumes a sinister posture and explains that this title belonged exclusively to King Hoya's eldest son. Transforming into a colossal beast, the former ally praises how fair the demonic race is, since only supreme strength reigns there. Overflowing with ambition, the flying monster warns that if he has enough power, it's not impossible to become the new demon emperor. Wasting no time, the gigantic blue dragon fires a massive blast of pure, devastating energy at the group. The absurd impact creates a huge explosion in the desert, completely destroying the cage of flames and the defenses around them. Feya holds her heavy shield firmly and instructs Princess Yvette to take advantage of any opening that appears above their heads. Just then, the winged beast quickly takes flight, generating a powerful energy vortex that consumes everything around it. Seizing the opening, the mountain leader activates her talent and launches herself into the sky, like a true missile toward the target. From above, the creature scoffs at the mage's charge, considering the attack a completely insignificant trick. But Glon suddenly appears in the air, covered in an explosive and lethal era of purple lightning. The hero lands a brutal blow that knocks the dragon down, making the monster complain indignantly for being outmatched like that. Far away, a mysterious old man watches the scene from the top of the cliff, noting that capturing the princess is no easy task. On the ground, Faya finds the enemy's quick escape strange. The protagonist coldly deduces that his former partner was just acting. The knight's mind recalls the clash of swords in the battle, when Merevech asked if he was looking at his face. In the memory, the swordsman admired himself in the mirror, while a young woman healed his bruised face. The young man rubbed a feather on the wound, wanting to create a majestic scar, claiming the future first knight couldn't have such a smooth face. Despite the trick, he admitted he needed a real mark from an intense battle, so as not to deceive himself. Staring at his own reflection with determination, the hero affirmed that he desired the recognition of the entire world. With great pride, Merevech guaranteed that he also sought his own approval above all else. In another moment from the past, the young man activated his healing magic upon noticing the stealthy arrival of the old chief, Julong. The mysterious lord asked in confusion why the young man hadn't mentioned he was gravely injured. Upon noticing his healed face, the swordsman fell into pure despair, whimpering about having lost his beautiful war scar. Returning to the recent combat, Glon remembers that his former ally asked him to make the fight look realistic because he was being watched. Faya is impressed by the impeccable performance. The warrior reveals there was no signal and the cut hurt, proving his friend just blamed it on a supposed master. Far away on the cliff, the old man tells the dragon that the mission failed because the intelligence was wrong, as there were more than 4 humans. In his original form, the fallen knight justifies himself, saying the enemy has at least the 5th mark, making the risk too high. The old man ironically asks if he wants more money to finally capture the princess alive as agreed. Ignoring the money, the blue-haired young man demands 10 vials of the power potion refined by King Hoya to reach the 6th mark. Back with the group in the desert, Faya carries little Sola in her arms while listening to the knight's assessment of the betrayal. Furious with the absurd demand, Julong tells his ally to stop being greedy, as too much power at once would make him explode. The swordsman scoffs, asking if he can't just stock up on the potion. The old man denies it, warning that the boss would release at most 1 vial. Immediately, the two begin to haggle over the prices comically, decreasing and increasing the quantity endlessly. Tired of this annoying negotiation, the old counselor sighs and finally agrees to close the deal at 2 vials. Merevech tells him to keep his word and warns that he will continue to watch the princess until he receives payment. At the camp under the starry sky, the protagonist watches the horizon when Yvette suddenly calls him. The princess walks toward the demons with a very serious and determined expression. The mage and the hero turn, confused. Yvette states that given the current situation, they need to act transparently. To the doe's surprise, the royalty and her subordinates bow deeply, apologizing for their previous offenses. The small human group shows total respect, thanking them from the bottom of their hearts for the protection. Kneeling on the dirt, the princess confesses she is very ashamed for not being able to repay such a favor to her saviors. Maintaining his composure, Glon asks her not to exaggerate and to focus only on retrieving the arm from the monster Jair the next day. Completely loyal, the noblewoman raises her head, vowing that her team will follow all his orders without question. The captain and the little girl agree, nodding their heads quickly, while the young man tells everyone to rest for the tough battle ahead. Feeling his hands freezing, the knight asks the mage to light the fire, warning about the brutal drop in temperature. Sulla's mind quickly recalls the teaching about the ancient fire deity to perform the basic spell. With a snap of her fingers, the little girl uses her blacksmith's ignition magic to create the initial spark. Immediately, the wood catches fire, raising warm and cozy flames in the dark, cold night. The whole group settles around the fire to warm up and relax their muscles before the great challenge. Breaking the camp's silence, Vet asks if the romantic rumors compiled by the sect are really true. Curious about the unexpected topic, Faya tilts her head, paying close attention to their conversation. The princess wants to know exactly about the supposed passionate tragedy in the lake village involving the hero and the sage Soika. The giant gets annoyed with the gossip, grumbling that the noble woman should be asking about the famous massacres of the era. The hero scolds his companion, telling her to go to sleep and forbidding swearing in unwanted conversations. With a distant look, Glon decides to tell the true story since the young woman is dying of curiosity. His memory travels to the past, when the group was still new and the cleric insisted on following him to a village destroyed by demons. In the memory, the two walked through the dark ruins when a ghostly bride gave them a macabre welcome. Scary demonic masks appeared, laughing in the dark, announcing that it was a great and joyous wedding day. The knight drew his sword, preparing for the imminent combat and activating his mobilization seal. His white-haired ally asked him to eliminate the monsters using holy light, leaving the boy confused by her inaction. The blindfolded sage sadly explained that she wished to give a peaceful and welcoming end to those corrupted souls. Understanding his colleague's beautiful request, the warrior immediately activated the seal of the Holy Light's warm embrace. The divine magic illuminated the darkness, purifying the spirits of the couple who vanished, relieved and at peace. With the mission completed, the knight sheathed his great blade while the woman remained in absolute silence. The dark-haired young man turned his head, waiting for his teammate's next move. The cleric continued to stand there quite shyly, creating a peaceful atmosphere in the middle of the abandoned village. Mustering her courage, she slowly extended her hand and touched her ally's clothes very subtly. The woman gently held his fingers, showing genuine affection for the first time. However, the hero's uncontrollable killer instinct took over, and he drew his weapon in a violent reflex. A colossal slash tore through the air, with the boy attacking his own partner out of pure survival reaction. Realizing the huge blunder he had made, Glon sheathed his sword, feeling absurdly hasty and guilty. Maintaining the worst possible posture, the knight scowled, demanding the young woman apologize immediately. Completely surprised by his rudeness, the mage just let out a murmur of total confusion and shock. The young man insisted that unannounced physical contact made him very uncomfortable, forcing the poor girl to take the blame for the incident. Back in the present, the protagonist swears it was just a subconscious counterattack, leaving the princess dead, disappointed with his coldness. Faya finds the whole story very funny and comments that this rude attitude is just like him. The protagonist just looks away, remaining silent without trying to justify himself. Time passes, and the group finally arrives at the outskirts of the famous ruins of Mud Cow City. Faya warns that the terrain is very complex and a direct attack would cause great losses for them. With that, the warrior decides to infiltrate alone, telling the group to stay hidden until the time for the surprise attack. Walking disguised through the city streets, he observes the large movement of demons wanting to join the king's army. The young man notices several human slaves being dragged by ropes like animals to serve in the campaigns. Remaining calm, he decides he can only rescue those people after finishing the main job. Just then, the guards laughingly comment on selling the captured men to the Brotherhood of Hunters. A monster in the courtyard shouts, announcing that this is the last available spot for the day's recruitment. Seizing the perfect opportunity, the knight pushes through the crowd and takes the front of the line without hesitation. From a high platform, the examiner notes that many there just want to take advantage of the leader's fame. Sitting casually, the blonde demon introduces himself as Clover and warns about the high recruitment standards. Displaying a very arrogant posture, he decrees that the army accepts only the elite and doesn't deal with trash. Staring at the protagonist below, the monster wonders how such a scrawny, useless guy got in there. Annoyed at being ignored, Clover threatens to cut off the boy's ears if he doesn't pay attention. The examiner gets up from his chair, telling everyone to shut up. Frustrated with the rookie's lack of composure, he orders them to come up one by one to test the power level of their talent marks on that magic device. Explaining the rules, the demon emphasizes that the seal's power is just a visual reference and doesn't define total strength. Calling the hero, he tells the young man to place his hand on the sphere, promising to judge his strength very fairly. Amused, the blonde man tells the newcomer not to be afraid of being eliminated right away. The sphere glows, revealing only the first electric seal, and the warrior calmly asks if he's qualified. Before the answer, a mysterious voice echoes through the place, calling the examiner weak and cowardly. The direct insult transforms the blonde man's expression into a purely threatening and hateful glare. Completely furious, he tells all the useless rookies to get lost so they don't waste his time. In a brutal and sudden attack, the beast smashes a demon's chest against the wall, splattering blood everywhere. Revealing a macabre face, the examiner coldly questions what the meaning of a life of trash like that is. The minion's destroyed body falls heavily onto the stone floor, creating a terrifying scene for the recruits. Suddenly, a bizarre and disgusting mass of distorted bodies appears, being dragged across the courtyard floor. The protagonist just observes this gigantic abomination, completely confused by what has just appeared. Regaining his composure, the blonde man explains that the abomination is just the great king's new concubine, kept in the next room. Immediately, a guard orders the soldiers to take the creature back carefully so as not to damage it. Straining hard, the group of minions drags the enormous ball of flesh through the dark fortress corridors. The bizarre, multi-faced creature cries and moans in pain as it is mercilessly pulled by the thick ropes. Witnessing such cruelty, the reincarnated warrior's face hardens, consumed by a cold feeling. The pile of human bodies writhes in agony, revealing the terrible fate of the victims of that place. He watches the scene from afar, memorizing every detail of that suffering to collect the debt at the right time. Paying no mind to the incident, Clover sits down again and tells the recruitment test line to continue. The next recruit hesitates and asks to go to the bathroom first, claiming a stomach ache might interfere with the test. Taking advantage of the delay, Glon quickly cuts the line and says he's also in a big hurry. Standing in front of the sphere, the hero asks to confirm if the army only accepts extremely strong or relentless people. Behind him, the other candidates whisper that the boy must be making up excuses to try and sneak away. The examiner loses his patience and confirms the rule, telling the rookie to shut up and take the test already. With a dark look, the protagonist ignores the order and directly questions if the blonde man considers himself strong enough. Feeling insulted by the insolence, Clover asks if the brat thinks a third, seal demon isn't qualified. Revealing his macabre form again, the monster guarantees that if the boy is just stalling, his end will be painful. Immediately, a violent explosion of purple lightning erupts, crushing the examiner with overwhelming force. Caught completely off guard by the impact, the blonde man's eyes widen, unable to process what hit him. Maintaining his typical coldness, the knight raises the intensely glowing magic sphere in the palm of his hand. The oppressive energy overloads the testing device, shattering the glass into thousands of sparkling pieces. The shards fall to the stone floor, followed by a dense silence that takes over the entire recruitment courtyard. The other candidates are completely paralyzed, trembling in terror at the brutal display of power. Wiping the blood from his face, the hero praises the test and calmly asks the guards if his result was approved. Sweating coldly and stammering, the fortress guard hastily agrees and says he is extremely qualified. Without looking back, the protagonist turns and calmly walks toward the rookie's resting tent. A few hours before this massacre, a small and mysterious red scroll had been delivered in secret. A spy explained that the item possessed real-time replication magic, allowing direct communication with Geelong. The boy used the magic item immediately, sending a message confirming he had already infiltrated the city. Far away in a hidden cave, the leader and the group anxiously awaited the next step of the risky plan. Excited, the lackey read Geelong's reply on the scroll, telling the hero to prepare to act soon. The girls watched the spy's movements with great attention and concern in the darkness of the hideout. Back in the present at the tent, the warrior calmly puts away the communication item after finishing reading the orders. Suddenly, a brute enters the area, calling for the talented recruit and announcing that the king has summoned him personally. Acting with extreme speed, the knight hides the red scroll using a silent trick before leaving. A smaller lackey questions if the scary rookie has been searched, but the brute confesses he didn't have the guts. Wanting to show he's on top of things, the giant guard orders the hero to stand up immediately for a full-body search. Maintaining his cold posture, Glon unhesitatingly opens his clothes and allows the inspection without showing any nervousness. The muscular demon carefully pats down the young man's arms and body, searching for any hidden weapons. Satisfied with the search, the guard grumbles that he found absolutely no suspicious items on the boy. With security confirmed, the beast says the king wishes to see him alone and begins to lead the way through the corridors. A quick flashback reveals that, 1 minute before the search, the hero cut his own arm to hide the scroll. Using his powerful green healing magic, he sealed the wound perfectly, concealing the magic object under his own skin. The loud, heavy sound of a large bell echoes through the impressive Gothic tower that cuts through the dark city skies. Arriving at the Great Hall, the brute announces the recruit's presence, and the leader immediately tells the lackey to fall back. Confirming the order, the guard withdraws, leaving the reincarnated warrior to advance alone to face the powerful target. Staring at the villain from afar, the protagonist realizes with disgust that this is how his old arm is being used. The scene reveals a huge and beautiful hall, illuminated by stained glass, where a calm melody echoes through the solitary environment. Sitting in the shadows, the imposing demon King Jir plays the instrument, completely focused on the music. One of the hands tickling the ivories clearly belongs to a human, exposing the stolen limb of the former hero. The other gray, monstrous hand keeps perfect rhythm, creating a bizarre contrast during the melody. Stopping his playing, the villain rests the human arm on the piano and finally announces he has noticed the recruit's arrival. Displaying a macabre face, Jir explains that he always plays the piano to try and suppress his immense urge to destroy. The monster stands up and walks calmly, telling the boy to relax because this is just a simple interview. Approaching the young man, the towering king asks if the newcomer has any questions about his army. Maintaining his usual coldness, Glon replies that he only wants to know why such a powerful leader would try to hold back his killer instincts. The Lord laments being constantly contradicted, confessing he makes a great effort to be a peaceful demon. Unfazed, the hero points out that their race is born to vanquish, making it impossible to act against that basic nature. The beast bares its sharp teeth in the darkness, agreeing that this lethal instinct was planted by the emperor himself. Changing the subject, Jir extends his hand and asks if the boy had heard that piano piece before. The reincarnated knight maintains an indifferent gaze and simply states he knows absolutely nothing about human music. In the blink of an eye, the leader throws a brutal punch, but the protagonist quickly blocks the violent impact. Grabbing the boy by the collar, Jir calls him a liar, revealing he noticed his frustration when he missed a note. With a threatening, glowing gaze, the creature demands a recruit answer a question with complete honesty. The monster tightens his grip on the hero's clothes and questions if his great bloodlust is pure demonic nature or just passion. Even with a bruised face, Glon flashes a confident smile and unhesitatingly replies that it's half and half. Satisfied with the boy's firmness, the king releases the recruit, concluding that his pulse didn't lie. The villain scoffs at the situation, finding it pathetic for a slave to give in to instincts, instead of seeking true freedom. Overflowing with arrogance, the beast states that developing a passion for being a simple doormat is utterly ridiculous. Seizing the opening, the knight retorts, asking if the leader doesn't need exactly an obedient lackey to do the dirty work. Surprised by the audacity, the big guy questions what the newcomer is really after by allying with him like this. The hero holds a cold, completely focused gaze on the monstrous leader in the dark room. Glon states that only by the king's side will he have the great chance to satisfy his urge to vanquish. An answer that convinces the villain. Excited by his new henchman, Jir gives the boy a friendly hug as if they were old war partners. Suddenly, a little red-haired human girl runs into the hall holding a crown of purple flowers. Cowling the monster, Father, the girl excitedly approaches, showing that the flowers perfectly match his skin. The young girl happily explains that she felt bad for picking the flowers, so she waited a long time until they fell on their own. Very proud of her own work, she extends her little arms, offering the rustic crown to the giant. Without the slightest bit of mercy, Jir delivers a brutal slap that strikes the child's face head-on. The violent impact throws the girl to the floor, while the monster furiously yells, reminding her he forbade her from running in there. Fallen and bleeding from the mouth, the little girl hears the leader bellow, asking if she has gone completely deaf. The reincarnated warrior just watches in silence as the villain complains that training humans is much worse than taming dogs. In tears, the little one curls up on the floor and desperately begs for her supposed father to stop hitting her. Ignoring her frightened cries, the towering king violently grabs her by the neck, wanting to make another clear warning. Lifting the choking hostage into the air, he decrees with pure cruelty that she is strictly forbidden from calling him father. Displaying his true, terrifying face, the beast throws it in the child's face that she is nothing but a filthy slave. Suddenly, a desperate guard bursts into the hall, warning that the famous evil dragon is approaching from the east. The monster immediately releases the girl, finding it the perfect moment to deal with the winged intruder's ill intentions. Coughing on the floor to catch her breath, the little one hears the cold order to return to the dark basement alone. The king tells the lackey he is very satisfied with the newcomer and orders him to take him back to the military camp. Following his superior's orders, the protagonist calmly follows the brood out of the fortress. Before leaving, the young man stops on the way and watches with sorrow as the poor little girl walks away with her head down. Far away in the heights, the former knight in dragon form grumbles, searching the terrain for the human princess. Atop the bell tower, Jir patiently awaits the approach of the dangerous winged creature. Wasting no time, the immense demon king takes a running start and leaps violently toward the skies. The dragon notices the aggressive approach, sensing a massive energy fluctuation rising swiftly from the city. A colossal explosion of power accompanies Jir's leap as he advances, ready to tear the flying threat to shreds. Reacting quickly, the intruder fires a massive and destructive blast of blue energy directly at the aggressor. The impact brutally rips through the clouds, allowing the winged beast to use the smoke to make a quick getaway. Landing on a roof, the monster leader clenches his fist, vowing that he needs to take that great power for himself. A guard soon arrives, praising the king's strength for scaring off the dragon, and Jir orders them to double the watch. Hidden in the shadows of the wall, the hero summons his magic snakes and admits the place's security is very well done. Nearby, one of the patrol guards lifts his boot, complaining that he just stepped on some sharp thorns. The wound carries a faint poisonous magic energy, so subtle that the dumb beasts don't even notice the boy's tracking. The brilliant tactic creates a luminous and invisible trail on the ground, revealing the exact path taken by the enemy troops. With this, the protagonist maps out the entire city's rigid surveillance route in the blink of an eye. Analyzing the glowing map, the young man decides to watch the patrols for a few more days to plan a perfect fatal attack. Suddenly, the reincarnated knight notices the small purple flower dropped on the ground and decides to pick up the fragile object. Trapped in the dark, damp basement, the little girl hears a noise and looks up, asking who is at the door. The hero uses his shadow tentacles to return the flowers through the bars, saying he thought she might need them. Utterly euphoric with the surprise, the young girl runs toward the bars with a big smile on her bruised face. The girl confesses she thought the king hated the crown because the weaving was ugly, while Glon notices the cell isn't even locked. Handing over the plant, the warrior questions why a human child would call a terrible demon father like that. Displaying pure innocence, she guarantees the monster is the best person she has ever met and heard that only parents take such good care of someone. The little one defends the aggressions, believing the heavy collar serves as protection against bad people in the world outside. Shocked, the young man asks what kind of beasts she encountered in the past to think this is good, but she says she doesn't remember well. A vague memory reveals the little girl tied to a post, bleeding heavily, being handed over to the cruel care of the villain Jir. The protagonist assesses the child in the dark and silently laments that the poor human doesn't even realize she's living like a slave. Trying to change her perspective, he asks if she doesn't want to see the outside world and have real adventures. In his thoughts, Glon deduces that she needs the company of a good friend to fix this broken mind, immediately thinking of Sulla. Excited that he knows about plants, the girl begs the hero to tell her stories of the world since the king doesn't let her have friends. Walking down the corridor, the protagonist reflects that the most urgent task at the moment is to uncover Jir's past without wasting time. Excited in her cell, the little human says goodbye and asks him to come back to play when he has free time. Sitting on the floor, she notices the loose cord and grumbles in fear that her supposed father will be very angry when he sees it. Trying to avoid any trouble, the little girl hurries and ties the small bow very tightly with her own hands. With that, the heavy collar rests on her neck while the flower cord is perfectly arranged. Far away, Glon leaps from the cliff, remembering that the princess escaped right near this dangerous territory. Landing on the dirt ground, the warrior meets the old Jelong, who agrees to negotiate directly with the local lord. Complaining about the boring job, the elderly counselor unleashes his dark energy and activates his talent seal to hide in the shadows. Meanwhile, an elegant glass is filled with a fine red wine in the comfort of the fortress. The imposing demon Kingjir spreads his seal detection throughout the area to track any energy fluctuations around. Hidden in the shadows, the protagonist uses extreme power compression in a small snake and finds this defense to be a complete joke. Savoring his drink, the villain tells the intruder to stop hiding, ironically asking if the invader thought he wouldn't be discovered. Maintaining a completely relaxed and arrogant posture, the big guy takes a sip of wine without even bothering to turn around. Jelong emerges from the darkness on the floor and mocks the monster's ugly appearance, deducing he must be the leader of this gang. Sitting in the armchair, Jir coldly concludes that a human invading his den didn't just show up for a simple lecture. The counselor steps out of the portal, staring at the magic snake, and warns that he and the evil dragon are only looking for one person, with no interest in the king. But the big guy takes another sip of his drink and calls the old man crazy for invading his home and still trying to make demands. Displaying an absurdly terrifying face in the shadows, the beast screams that the intruder has no manners whatsoever. Annoyed by the audacity, Jelong tells the monster not to push his luck, guaranteeing he could take out a brute like that in 3 minutes. Suddenly, a purple lantern appears floating in the room while a mysterious voice complains about all the noise. Staring at the magic object, the old man celebrates the boss's timely arrival and asks for help in eliminating this major obstacle. Quite surprised, the Demon King questions if that item is the famous treasure from the ancient republic capable of crossing the barriers of space. Holding the glowing artifact, the old human smiles confidently and scoffs, asking if the monster has finally felt the fear of his end. However, Zhu displays a macabre smile, holding his own purple lantern, stating that by a great coincidence, he has one too. Upon seeing the item in the enemy's hands, the counselor is in absolute shock, letting out a cry of pure confusion and disbelief. The voice from the lantern asks them both to stop fighting, joking that all this arguing only serves to bring allies closer. A blonde man emerges from the dark portal, explaining that both Jir and the old man Simon are excellent lackeys working for him. Taking center stage in the hall, the imposing boss Matthias listens as the human counselor addresses him with total respect and submission. Concealing its presence, Glon's snake watches everything, and the hero concludes that the same guy is secretly manipulating both sides of the war. Playing with chess pieces in his hand, the blonde leader calmly states that one of his subordinates represents the rook on the board. Calculatively swapping the piece between his fingers, he completes the analogy, saying the other lackey acts as his valuable bishop. Displaying the chess pieces, Matthias decrees that his great game will only continue if both maintain their original positions. Simon bows, praising the boss's wisdom, certain that the overthrow of the false King Hoya and the restoration of the lineage are very close. Quickly changing the subject, the blonde man looks over his shoulder and questions Zir about the bounty placed on the heads of 4 assassins. The monster tries to explain the confrontation with the giant, but is quickly cut off by the master's cold order to call off the search immediately. In a brusque and domineering gesture, the blonde man grabs the giant beast by its dark hair, demonstrating all his superior authority. Forcing the demon down, the boss tells him to be a good boy and warns that he only bought this package deal for the promise of obedience. Displaying a sadistic and threatening smile under his dark gaze, the humanoid warns the monster not to cause him any kind of trouble. Clenching his fist with pure frustration, Gier accepts the order and begs for the old promise of freedom to be fulfilled. A close-up on Matthias's glowing blue eye reveals a tone of deep cynicism upon hearing that word so desired by his subordinate. Holding a strange broken artifact in his hand, the boss admits he has no idea where the old master got so many magic toys. The blonde man explains that crushing that item would cause the other half to detonate the Lord's head, but promises to hand over the piece if he wins the game. With the purple lantern in hand, Matthias jokes that the mere idea of freedom makes the beast so happy he's practically singing around the base. Abruptly ending the small talk, the leader turns his back and commands old Simon and the evil dragon to act according to the circumstances. Entering the dark dimensional portal, he calls the big guy to visit the royal chambers and enjoy the new slaves that have arrived. Holding his own glowing lantern with total submission, the old counselor accepts his superior's orders with his head bowed. The old man walks down the corridor, demanding a good room to sleep in, while the hero's magic snake discreetly follows the Demon King. The dark duo dives through the air, descending swiftly down the enormous hole of a spiral staircase towards the fortress's depths. Hidden behind the cold stone wall, the reincarnated warrior carefully watches the steps and secrets of that great enemy king. The giant monster finally stops in front of that bizarre and gigantic ball of agglomerated human bodies in the dark cell. Raising the magic light in the macabre environment, the beast coldly questions if the cursed creatures are about to be born from it. Immediately, the horrendous mass of flesh squeezes and spits out a large, reddish, pulsating egg onto the dirty floor of the dark dungeon. The strange, bloody cocoon rests on the dark stone, exuding an absurdly heavy and lethal aura throughout the secret room. The red membrane stretches to its maximum and begins to pulsate violently, ready to rupture and release whatever is inside. Breaking the shell in a violent jet of dark blood, a terrifying gray and demonic hand rips through the prison to reach the outside. Bathed in grotesque filth, the newborn demon drags itself across the floor, stammering the master's name and begging for immediate orders. Without stopping for a second, the immense flesh abomination continues to expel dozens of new bloody eggs without the slightest bit of mercy. The blonde man praises his own creation of hybrids that are born adult and obedient, celebrating having made a great legion of second, seal soldiers with mass production. A true army of gray demons rises from the pools of blood, repeating the same robotic litany, awaiting the next command. Gier orders them to be trained quickly and announces the ranks of the new hybrid army using the Emperor's own name, which is accepted immediately. Pointing the purple light at the mountain of destroyed human hostages, the monster orders the boss to annihilate those useless failures. The blonde man praises the demonic brutality, comparing it to a rough stone that needs to be sculpted with art. But the king confesses he understands none of it. In the huge and luxurious velvet villa, Matthias relaxes on the sunny balcony with a glass of wine, complaining about his minion's lack of romance. The property's beautiful garden comes to life with the arrival of a group of young women walking shyly along the illuminated stone path. Relieved, the young orphans are grateful for the chance to serve an important lord, accepting to put up with any old pervert in exchange for good food. Suddenly, the handsome blonde noble appears in front of the group, politely greeting the ladies, leaving them all completely enchanted by his beauty. A blue-haired girl blushes intensely as the lord holds her hand and shyly asks if he is the great noble willing to welcome them to the villa. The other humans whisper excitedly, praising the immense elegance of that old-fashioned nobleman, finding him 1,000 times better than the cruel nobles of today. Euphoric with their great luck, they surround the blonde man, thanking him from the bottom of their hearts and begging for the best-made positions in the luxurious mansion. With a beautiful, friendly, and welcoming smile, Matthias calms the young women, asking them all to stay close and tight together in the same spot. Obeying their new master's order, the group of women hug each other, smiling under the morning sun, with no idea of the brutal fate that awaits them. They press their happy faces against each other, blindly believing they have just found true paradise on earth. In a macabre blink of an eye, the sweet illusion turns into a great nightmare as an overwhelming power begins to grind the flesh and bones of the screaming hostages. Using pure dark, evil magic, the false noble violently crushes the living humans and joins the shattered pieces into a single disgusting block in the garden. The terrifying result is a gigantic and repulsive ball of mutilated bodies moaning in pure agony on the freshly blood-painted grass. Maintaining his relentless posture in the garden, Matthias admires the grotesque mountain of bodies he has just created. The villain used the power of his terrifying talent seal to fuse the flesh of those innocent victims all at once. Satisfied with the bizarre work, the boss tells his lackeys to take good care of the new concubine, because he has a ball to attend. Hidden in the corridor shadows, the reincarnated warrior watches the monsters dragging away the destroyed victims. Consumed by fury at the sight, Glon focuses his magic and fires a powerful healing spell at the creature. However, the magic fails miserably, making it clear that recovery cannot restore the shattered bodies. The hero bitterly notes that the enemy's cursed seal has transformed all the hostages into a single, indivisible abomination. Far away, the poor human little girl is thrown violently onto the stone floor by her supposed father. Turning his back, Jir coldly orders his minions to check the number marked on the girl's neck right away. Trembling with fear, the child hears the guard warn that she must never reveal that number, especially to Boss Matthias. The little one quickly agrees, while Glon listens to the whole conversation, hidden and very confused in the shadows. The knight deduces that the so-called corpse ability is not the only special seal in the world, surprised by the discovery. In the middle of the room, the giant demon king stares at the crown of purple flowers silently and enigmatically. The monster's mind recalls the moment the hostage smiled, calling him father, and confessed she didn't want freedom. To no one's surprise, the beast rests the simple crown on its own head in the darkness of the hall. Annoyed by the delay, Jir tells the girl to stop messing around and clean up that bloody mess on the floor. Hearing the order, the little human clenches her fists with great force, trying to control something. Suddenly, a colossal and violent explosion of pure dark energy erupts from the hostage's small body in the hall. With blood dripping from her mouth, the girl's eyes lose focus and begin to glow intensely in a macabre trance. Hidden in the dark, the protagonist maintains a focused gaze, trying to understand what bizarre thing is happening. The terrible authority of the sea of blood and corpses finally awakens, activating a deadly and terrifying stage. Thick black tentacles brutally rip through the child's back, taking over the small, fragile body. The energy expands rapidly, forming a gigantic and grotesque demonic silhouette with a huge red eye. The reincarnated hero immediately understands that this bizarre power is actually a dark parasite acting as a host. The hideous creature feeds on pure slaughter, growing until it breaks the cocoon to finally be born into the world. Analyzing the extreme danger, Glon coldly concludes that only a divine item could suppress it. Completely consumed by pain in the monster, the little girl cries tears of blood, quietly begging for her father's help. The Lord faces the creature and remembers the advice to use the object embedded in her back to force the entity to retreat. The immense parasite opens its reddish eyes in the dark, ready to cause a real carnage in the place. Without hesitating for a second, the Demon King charges forward with fury and shoves his own hand directly into the beast's dark mass. The collision is brutal, and the giant monster delivers heavy blows against the parasite entity in a disgusting bloodbath. Maintaining his calm in the heady-out, the young man observes the violent family fight, while whispering the little girl's name. Taking advantage of the chaos, the small magic snake stealthily slithers across the stone floor without drawing any attention. Walking in the shadows, Glon deduces that stealing the arm will be impossible if the pair fights together, deciding to free the girl. A dark voice in his mind asks if he wants to be a hero or just steal power, but the knight simply ignores the taunt. The scene shifts to the Allied camp, where Princess Yvette reads the warning to postpone the stealth attack. The noblewoman approaches the human counselor, humbly thanking him for all the help in the search for the severed limb. To reward his efforts, Jilong writes a letter of recommendation, guaranteeing that King Hoya will pay very well for it. The fearful soldier takes the document, all excited, and guarantees he made only a small and modest contribution. Completely euphoric, the captain already dreams of buying a large mansion for his parents and becoming a powerful count in the future. Yvette reprimands her colleague, warning that boasting before the war is over brings a lot of bad luck and certain doom. Hearing the heavy scolding, the archer and little Sola cover their mouths, completely terrified of their own lethal bad luck. Amused by her companion's desperation, the princess lets out a sincere laugh, lightening the heavy mood in the desert. Far away in the comfort of his villa, the sadistic Matthias relaxes, playing chess and questioning the progress of the preparations. Observing the board, he celebrates that the secret recruitment of troops in Mud Cow City is going very well. Holding a glowing vial, the blonde villain asserts that capturing the noble princess is just a simple matter of time. However, the Lord's face darkens in frustration, revealing he can't find the guy who sold him Galong's arm. The beast's mind travels a year into the past, remembering the great and ancient ruins of the famous White Road City. In the memory, Matthias walked with a lackey, guaranteeing that the feared Demon King Shu would keep his word. A strange round, magic object rolls across the stone floor right toward the blonde noble's elegant boots. Approaching the throne in the ruins with extreme calm, the villain politely asks the king to pass him the ball. Standing in front of the demonic deity, Matthias analyzes the great damage suffered by the powerful adversary. Straight to the point, he offers his seal's power to heal the permanent, severe injuries the king suffered in battle. Displaying the strange sphere in his hands, the Lord reveals that this little gift is precisely the valuable arm of Jilong. Wounded but imposing, she refuses the offer on the spot, stating he doesn't want to mess with that trash out of pure personal grudge. The blonde villain just accepts the refusal, offering to help find decent limbs in exchange for future favors. Back in the present, the false noble moves a chess piece, thanking the human king's mercy and sparing his lineage. The dark memory reveals the former monarch demanding an end to the slaughter and ceding noble titles to avoid total war. Crushing the piece with a purely insane look, Matthias guarantees that now the rules of the game and the war belong only to him. In the depths of the fortress, the little human girl draws on the wall and notices the hero's shadow suddenly arriving. Happy with the nightly visit, the girl smiles sweetly and celebrates the arrival of her new and mysterious friend from the darkness. The reincarnated warrior emerges from the shadows without making a sound so as not to alert the enemy base's security. Very anxious, the hostage asks if he finally remembered a fun story about the world outside. Sitting on the straw floor, Glon asks if she knows White Road City, and the girl praises the place's wealth. With a very calm and deeply nostalgic gaze, the protagonist focuses on his small spectator. He decides to tell the story of an old acquaintance, revealing that the events began exactly 33 years in the past. The young man's mind travels to a gigantic city of circular architecture, being brutally battered by a storm. The knight comments that the sad little boy's first real memory always involved a heavy and endless curtain of rain. Dark and completely flooded streets shape the melancholic scene of the difficult life the residents led there. Through the small fog window, the memory recounts that this lonely and quiet boy was born on an autumn afternoon. Inside the filthy hovel, the father held his newborn son while suffering from extremely strong coughing fits. Lacking means, the poor mother washed clothes in the biting cold every day until her hands turned purple with pain. Despite all the misery, the little boy always rested his face on the window, displaying a sincere and innocent smile. However, the father's illness only worsened with time, causing the man to constantly spit blood in the corners of the house. To make matters worse, the malicious neighbors gossiped in the rain, calling the kid useless for not working, considering the child a burden. The sick father coughs hard and defends his son, assuring the neighbors that the boy isn't mute, just a bit slower to learn to speak. With that, the residents walk away in the rain, complaining about the heavy tax increases meant to reinforce the border against the neighboring kingdom of Ainia's rebellion. Observing the street from his doorway, the sick man wonders if they'll survive this difficult year, but decides to live one day at a time. Despite all the hardship, he smiles lovingly, ruffling the little boy's hair as the mother watches the scene with affection. Handing a few coins to his son, the man asks him to go buy the same cheap bread as always, and the little one immediately agrees. Walking through the flooded streets, the boy overhears people gossiping that the rebellion already has thousands of people led by a simple cook. Running through a dark alley under the storm, the kid spots the young noble Matthias standing alone in the middle of that dirty, wet path. The little protagonist stops instantly, staring at the rich hare who looks him up and down with a completely indecipherable and silent gaze. Seeing the noble standing there in the rain, the kid extends his arms and innocently offers one of the loaves of bread he just bought to try and help the stranger. Confused by the gesture, the rich young man gets annoyed in his thoughts, questioning what this weird brat wants by offering food out of the blue. Not understanding the other's hesitation, the little boy holds his offer firm, holding the bag of bread with an extremely friendly smile. After a few seconds of awkward silence, Matthias finally gives in and takes a piece of the modest food from the commoner's hand. He examines the cheap bread with great curiosity, as he has never had to eat something so simple and hard in his entire luxurious life. Putting his pride aside, the young man takes a bite of the snack in the middle of the storm while the kid watches, very satisfied. Suddenly, two adult bandits surround the boys in the alley and aggressively demand they hand over all their money immediately. One of the bandits tries to intimidate them, but Matthias steps forward, arrogantly questioning if these thieves dare to attack the weak there. Annoyed by the brat's audacity, the thug grabs the noble's clothes, lifting him off the ground and calling him a completely presumptuous kid. The criminals laugh in his face, warning that the law of survival of the fittest is the only rule that truly works in this miserable slum. With a glowing and threatening gaze, the rich young man coldly retorts, calling that rule ignorant and a pure symbol of irrational bestiality. Pushing the little commoner back, he proclaims that his father taught him that the strong protecting the weak is what defines true civilization. Not understanding a word of that cultured talk, the bandit tells the boy to shut up, warning that he's in no mood to debate. Matthias summons his colossal and terrifying talent mark of the King of Kings, vowing he will never tolerate these beasts dressed as humans. The overwhelming and dark aura scares the two cowardly thugs, who run off desperately through the flooded alley to save their own lives. Impressed by the strength, Glon hears the prim hero proudly state that he doesn't need reverence for simply protecting the weak. With a genuine smile, the rich young man holds up his piece of hard bread and states that he has already received all the gratitude he needed through that snack. After the commotion, the two boys sit together on a dirty step and finish their modest meal as the rain continues to fall heavily. Time passes, and the unlikely friendship strengthens. With the pair having a lot of fun throwing snowballs during the city's harsh winter, spring soon arrives, illuminating the region, and the kids run through the green fields, enjoying their youth without caring about their differences. In the heat of summer, they rest, sitting by a calm stream, enjoying the peace and tranquility of that small, remote village. Running to keep up with his fast friend, Matthias asks him to slow down, curiously questioning what cool thing they are rushing to see. Arriving at the central square, they come across a huge crowd gathered under the rain, watching a public execution by hanging. The noble scowls, annoyed, grumbling that he hates being in the middle of that mob, and would rather be reading old books in the library's silence. Completely focused on the terrifying scene, the little boy just points forward, ignoring his rich friend's boring complaint. The executioner announces to the city that the criminal has stolen several times and decrees death by hanging, releasing the trapdoor at that very moment. The condemned man struggles in agony with the rope tightening around his neck, fighting for breath in a cruel and terrifying spectacle for the children. Frightened by the brutality, the young rich man vows never to return there and scolds his friend, telling him to stop hanging out with bad company. He vents, finding the current laws too cruel, and firmly promises to do everything to reform this system when he takes power in the future. To change the subject and ease the tense atmosphere, Matthias holds up a beautiful woven ball he brought for them to play with together. Satisfied with the company, the young man says goodbye, warning that he needs to go have dinner at the mansion, but guarantees they will play more the next day. Later, the rumors in the alleys said that the rich would build large prisons because some merchants were secretly helping the enemy rebellion. Arriving at his luxurious mansion, the rich boy is greeted by the butler, who seriously informs him of his father's impatient wait in the office. Standing before his father's imposing shadow, the young man swallows hard upon hearing the scolding about neglecting his studies lately. The Chief of Justice maintains a stern gaze and demands that the heir stop wasting time playing around with useless friends in the city streets. As a severe punishment, the man forbids his son from leaving the house until he memorizes the entire third volume of the kingdom's laws within a week. Ending the scolding with no room for tears, the patriarch orders the lackey to prepare the carriage immediately for a council meeting. The next day, Glon runs happily through the rain, tossing his woven ball in the air, eager to play with his friend again. Suddenly, armed guards rush by brutally and shove the little boy to the ground, cursing him as a filthy commoner to clear the way. Fallen in a puddle of dirty water, the kid watches his beloved ball roll away, not understanding the reason for such sudden violence in the street. Desperate, a worker begs the soldiers, swearing his innocence regarding the so-called rebel alliance, but the military man states that justice will decide everything. The boy panics as he sees his own sick parents being mercilessly dragged by the armored soldiers in the middle of the storm. The soldiers forcefully march the prisoners, completely ignoring the cries and despair of the innocent families being arrested. At the luxurious council, the nobles demand swift punishment, stating that betraying the crown and helping the rebels is the worst crime of all in the nation. Matthias's father cautiously argues that more than 100 people have been arrested and asks for time to think, finding it too cruel to execute everyone. The huge round table falls into a tense silence, with the rich aristocrats weighing the great weight and political consequences of that decision. Pressured by the critical situation, the patriarch sorrowfully admits that the kingdom cannot risk letting the rebel spark ignite the population. Convinced of the threat, the leader concludes that the rebellion would completely destroy order, dragging thousands of citizens into a bloodbath. Accepting his own dark burden, he makes the terrible final decision, firmly believing that one must choose the lesser of two evils to maintain peace. The cruel sentence is carried out under heavy rain, with Glon's parents agonizing as the ropes brutally tighten around their necks. Restrained by the guards' force, the little protagonist screams and cries, watching his own family be unjustly hanged in the square. The soldiers hold the boy with redoubled force to prevent him from causing trouble, while another tells his colleague not to get so worked up. The sadistic executioners laugh at the situation and reveal they bet money to see how long the brat could last hanging too. Far from that carnage, the young Matthias watches the storm from the mansion window, calmly commenting that the rain was getting worse. Trying to leave the house, the heir is intercepted by the butler, who reinforces the patriarch's order to finish studying the laws first. The young man insists on going for a walk, confessing he has a very bad feeling that something tragic would happen on that gloomy day. With his face covered by a threatening shadow, the butler forbids him from leaving and coldly lies, guaranteeing that nothing is happening outside. Defeated by the orders, the young man stares at the storm from his doorstep and sighs in resignation that the end of autumn was always rainy in the city. The sad reality showed dozens of hanging bodies swaying on ropes in a macabre and silent scene under the heavy storm. In the midst of that torture, Glon survives, tied by his thick wrists, gritting his teeth and fighting against the extreme pain of the cowardly punishment. The kid's mind begins to fail, and his parents' voices echo in the rain, asking him to give up and stop worrying about them in life. Tears mix with the rain on the little boy's bruised face as he suffers unbearable pain and a completely devastating psychological terror. The dark whispers of the phantoms insist he let go of the weight and finally rest in peace to end this useless suffering for good. Stretching his muscles to the maximum, the protagonist contorts, hanging from the wooden structure, surrounded by the cold corpses of his own family. The heavy footsteps of a guard's boots break the sound of the storm, approaching the child, who was at his true physical and mental limit. Tired of the cruel game, the executioners release the bonds, and the exhausted brat collapses to his knees, sinking his hands into the dark mud puddle. Coughing and shivering from the cold, the little hero looks up, completely traumatized and destroyed inside, forever marked by that tragedy. Fallen in the mud under the storm, little Glon stares at the lifeless bodies of his own parents swaying on the ropes. A guard soon approaches the exhausted child and calls him a useless piece of trash with total contempt. The soldier complains that if the boy had lasted hanging for another 10 minutes, he would have won the bet to buy a drink. Turning to leave, the man tells the brat to get lost, quickly. However, the kid lunges in a desperate reflex and grabs the military man's leg with great force. Annoyed by the audacity, the guard demands the smelly mute let go of his boot immediately. But the child ignores the order and continues to hold on tight as the man yells for him to let go. Without the slightest bit of mercy, the executioner delivers a brutal kick directly to the boy's face, wishing for his end. Nearby, the other soldiers watch the commotion under the storm. Finding the commoner's audacity absurd, the group of military men advances, cursing and wielding their heavy weapons. A cowardly sequence of blows hits the fallen little boy, who is beaten without any chance of defense. Taking advantage of the victim on the ground, one of the soldiers brings his blade down in a direct and lethal attack. In a pure act of survival and fury, Glon bites the enemy's weapon, breaking his own teeth on the steel. The sudden impact startles the aggressor, who violently yanks the tool back. With the jolt, the little protagonist is brutally thrown back into the dark mud puddle. Completely bloodied, the boy raises a fierce and unshakable gaze at his aggressors. At this, the soldiers draw their bows, ready to finish the cowardly job. The boy grits his broken teeth, gathering the last drop of strength from his injured body. Without a second thought, he turns his back and runs desperately to try and save his own life. A sharp arrow pierces the kid's shoulder, but he ignores the pain and continues the frantic escape. The little one disappears into the shadows of a narrow alley, while the archers watch from a distance. Furious with the escape, the guards split up through the city streets to hunt the little beast. Dragging his feet on the rain, Glon walks alone through the dark alley, feeling unbearable pain. Surrounded by corpses and agonizing people, he just wishes someone would end his suffering soon. Suddenly, a skeletal resident crawls in the mud, begging the boy to put an end to his misery. The protagonist freezes in place, frightened by that macabre request in the middle of the night. A bizarre dark entity appears in the child's mind, whispering that he must help the weak by bringing them their end. The little boy asks what it is, and the shadow reveals it is his eternal partner, and a part of his soul. Agonizing from hunger, the man grabs the boy's neck while Glon refuses the idea of taking a life. Displaying a large red eye, the inner monster questions why the boy wants to deny his own nature. The entity warns it cannot control the body, while the kid strangles the man, crying and saying he doesn't want to do it. The monster questions if he'd rather live at the mercy of others, like his parents, guaranteeing the boy was born to dominate. Bleeding, Glon asks his purpose, and the shadow affirms that he is a storm destined to sweep the world. The voice tells him to stop hesitating, instigating the desire to become an indestructible force capable of destroying anything. With his eyes glowing an intense red, the boy hears the shadow suggest he take control of his own life for good. Far away, the patrol runs through the alleys, warning they need to capture the sick brat before he spreads infections. Searching a flooded alley, one of the soldiers stops, confused, upon noticing something very strange on the ground. Quickly drawing his sword, the man advances with great caution toward the dark alley. The guard panics upon coming face to face with a grotesque pile of mutilated corpses in the mud puddle. Trembling in pure terror, the military man turns his head and catches the small, dark silhouette of the boy right behind him. Giving no time for reaction, the little protagonist lunges, executing a brutal and silent attack against the soldier. Bathed in enemy blood, the young assassin takes a deep breath, displaying a terrifying coldness in his gaze. A monstrous black aura erupts from the boy's body as he devours the vital essence of his prey. The scene shifts to the city streets, where a large, desperate crowd blocks the passage of a luxurious carriage. Offering coins, the peasants tearfully beg for a little of the milk being transported there to save their children from starvation. A guard suggests selling a little of the milk, but the other refuses, warning they'll lose their heads if anything is missing for the nobleman's luxury bath. The cruel Lady Talia possesses a rare and devastating divine talent, continuously feeding her power through the population's pure fear. The commander of the guards raises his sword, ordering the troop to act as true shepherds, controlling the flock for the rich. He explains that the people are not peaceful, but fearful, and that terror is the only tool to maintain order. To prove his point, the officer brutally cuts down a peasant and questions if the soldiers got the message. Panic grips the crowd as the military attacks mercilessly, breaking the precious milk barrels on the ground. Suddenly, the soldiers themselves are shocked, not understanding the bizarre turn of events that just occurred. A villager falls, gone, into the flood of wasted milk while desperate hands try to collect the dirty liquid. Lying in the filth, little Glon drinks the milk mixed with mud and blood in a scene of extreme misery and hunger. Annoyed by the audacity, a guard points at the boy, yelling if the commoner has a death wish. The executioner raises his sharp blade, preparing a fatal blow against the fragile child in the middle of the rain. Soon after, this same soldier begs terrified for his own life, swearing he was only following his superior's orders. A furious villager crushes the guard, questioning why so many must starve while awakening their hidden talents. Bathed in an aura of power, the man revolts against the noble's privileges, inciting the people to fight since they have nothing to lose. With the population's fury reaching its absolute limit, the great and bloody rebellion of White Road City finally erupts. Atop the walls, the officers observe the strange unrest and wonder why the lazy commoners are so euphoric. Protected by a guard, Lady Talia listens to the report informing that a small rebellion and a beast are causing chaos in the city. Sighing with boredom, the woman complains she had just done her nails, but soon orders the soldiers to crush the revolt. Widespread combat takes over the streets, with the rebels beating the military with pure fury and resentment. The noblewoman finally arrives at the battlefield, greeted by relieved soldiers who were awaiting her presence to turn the tide. Extending her hand sadistically, Talia orders the execution of all the peasants without the slightest bit of mercy. The rebels scream in pure terror as a terrible incandescent magic begins to burn their bodies from the inside out. A monstrous web of flames destroys the crowd in an instant, reducing the population's hope to smoking ashes. The carnage spreads through the courtyards of the grand palaces, leaving a trail of blood and destruction under the heavy rain. Inside the luxurious mansion, the young Matthias's father shoves the boy into his room, demanding he hide inside and not come out. Banging on the locked door, the heir panics, begging his patriarch to let him out to help with the commotion. Getting no answer, the young man runs to the large window to try and understand what is happening outside. Remembering the climbing techniques his mute friend taught him, he focuses on coordination and decides to escape via the tower's stone wall. However, the rain makes the surface extremely slippery, and the young noble ends up plummeting violently onto the wet roof. Lying on the cold tiles, Matthias looks up and is in a state of absolute shock at the terrifying scene he just witnessed. Lying on the wet ground, young Matthias stares at a terrible scene of his friend taking out his own patriarch. Completely shocked and unable to believe it, he desperately screams his father's name. Even in agony, the man begs his heir to run quickly while the murderous boy exudes pure evil. Consumed by absolute terror, the young noble turns his back and flees as fast as he can. Little Glon soon begins the relentless pursuit, wielding the bloody blade with murderous focus. A strong bolt of lightning rips through the night sky, illuminating the immense mansion, now a stage for a true carnage. In a brutal leap, the kid lunges with his demonic shadow, ready to tear his former friend to shreds. With nowhere to run, the rich heir freezes in place, feeling that the end of his life has come. However, the little assassin freezes mid-strike, fighting violently against his own instincts. Regaining a bit of his sanity, Glon hesitates for a brief moment, making it clear he doesn't want to do this. Seizing this single opening, Matthias throws himself through the glass window to escape the deadly attack. The boy plummets through the air amidst shards of glass, managing to escape that blood-soaked mansion. Alone in the storm, the hero realizes too late that the massacre is over and no one won this tragedy. A deep pain takes over the protagonist, who lets out a silent scream of pure agony and despair. Bathed in the cold rain, he remains there, completely broken and consumed by the weight of his own actions. Back in the dark cell, the little human laments the story, wanting to know why everyone had such a sad ending. She assumes the parasite controlled his mind, comparing it to the king, who also loses control of his actions. The hero denies it, stating that although he didn't want that ending, all his actions were his own choices. An old scroll reveals the bloody history of how the ancient White Road City was destroyed in the war. The little girl taps her forehead, thinking seriously about what else she herself wants to do from now on. Sitting on the straw, she says that a rebel group from the north is causing a lot of trouble for King Jir. Excited, she decides to scare the bandits to cheer up her father, and the knight agrees that it's a great idea. The girl runs off happily, saying goodbye, while he advises her to make her own decisions without telling anyone. Alone in the dark, the reincarnated warrior stares into the void, reflecting on everything he just discussed. The parasite appears, mocking the young man's face, calling him incompetent for dragging the new generation into danger. Ignoring the taunt, the protagonist tells the beast to say whatever it wants and calls it a pure, cowardly escapist. His mind flashes back to the girl's attitude a few moments ago, reflecting on her newly discovered desire. He replays her words about the so-called rebel troop from the north that was deeply annoying the giant lord. The young man finally understands the child's innocent plan to go there alone, just to scare off the deserters. Confirming his suspicion, he remembers the girl agreeing enthusiastically and realizes the huge risk she's taking. Earlier, Jir questions the girl's desire to leave but dismisses her, saying she wants to become someone better as nonsense. A bit embarrassed, she admits she's not very sure. The monster pats her head and allows her to leave, demanding discretion. She runs off excitedly while the Lord deduces it's safer to keep her away from Boss Matthias's dangerous minions. Now in the present, the knight stares at the city ruins and thinks that little Zinna will suffer, but it's for her own good. The young man takes the red scroll from his clothes, preparing to give the great signal for his allies to attack. Far away, the frog messenger tells the hidden group that it's finally time to prepare for action. Feya and Princess Vet agree, stating that the patrol route allows for a completely silent infiltration. Little Solo proudly displays Jelong's old sword, guaranteeing she did excellent maintenance on the blade. Vet relays the orders for her subordinates to monitor the north and immediately notify them if the red-haired girl returns. Walking through the city, Jelong assesses that they need to defeat Jir quickly and without giving any chance for a counterattack. Disguised in the street, the protagonist suddenly hears an aggressive voice telling him to stop walking immediately. Old Simon recognizes him as the princess's bodyguard, cursing himself for being so careless there. Preparing his fingers for a quick spell, the old man questions with pure hostility what the boy is doing in the area. Suddenly, two swift demonic minions fall from the sky, attacking the old man from behind without any warning. The hero deduces the enemy is dumb and states that a wise man would have secretly given up information about the captured princess. The blue-haired ally appears, smiling, complaining that she turned the place upside down without finding any trace of the princess. Suddenly, Lord Jir arrives on the scene with an arrogant posture, asking what everyone is doing there. Simon retorts furiously, accusing the monster of trying to steal his credit, asking if the giant has lost his mind. Completely indignant at the accusation, the old counselor yells that the demon is the one with rocks for brains. The female lackey loses her patience and tells her boss to attack already. While the knight's eyes glow, ready for the slaughter, the blue creature lunges, firing its heavy ice and fire attack at the hero, who activates his lethal shadow. A colossal explosion of energy engulfs the street as the two destructive powers collide with extreme violence. The old human is completely shocked to come face to face with Jira's hideous and furious face appearing right in front of him. Drawing his knife, Simon leaps in anger, vowing he was completely sick of that disgusting monster's face. Jir activates his shadow dive talent seal, stating that without the old man, the great boss will value him much more. Baring his sharp teeth, the monster scoffs, calling the old man an idiot for trusting so much in an escape talent. With a purely sadistic and demonic smile, the beast prepares to tear the human counselor to shreds once and for all. In the middle of the street, the intense exchange of blows continues between the protagonist and the female lackey who exudes opposing powers. Agile in the air, Simon delivers swift blows with his small blade, trying to keep up with that lord's absurd speed. The fight between the giant and the old man moves further and further from the city center, destroying the walls along the way. Eating a snack, the female lackey gives up the fight, complaining of exhaustion, and ironically asks if the pair in the distance is having fun. She explains that the king can't handle long battles and plans to attack when he tires, and the hero just accepts the break. In a devastating impact, the giant beast charges, shattering the stone street against the counselor who tries to retreat swiftly. His gaze dominated by fury, the monstrous lord warns with great hatred that the old idiot has really managed to annoy him. Immediately, Simon activates his wind seal, creating a strong destructive tornado to try and sweep the monster off the map. Pushed back by the gust, the counselor curses the opponent's invisible blows, finding that tactic extremely cowardly. The intense and destructive battle rages on under the reddish light of the beautiful sunset, covering the city ruins. Displaying a purely evil smile in the dark, the human states with conviction that no one in the world can be dirtier than him. Far away, the human troop carefully watches the north, ready to notify of the red-haired girl's return at any moment. On the roof, Jelong hopes the old man will force the king to reveal his secret tricks, as the shadow tactic guarantees protection. Diving into the darkness, Simon transforms into a black stain on the ground, patiently waiting for the best chance to attack. Using his secret authority of manipulation, the old man slithers across the ground and celebrates capturing the big guy's shadow. Confident, He reveals that the Lord's gust depends on physical movement, and his control magic has just neutralized it all, forcing the beast to raise its arms. Simon cruelly orders the monster to use its own claws to tear its head. However, Jir fires a sudden repulsive wind, leaving the human shocked to discover the monster had more than one trick. Zir charges his own fist with intense wind magic. Surprised, Simon realizes the monster used magic on its body to overcome his physical control and decides to retreat until the energy runs out. Far away, little Juna walks disappointedly through the dry land, lamenting that the bandits are already gone. A human scout observes the girl from a distance and tells his colleague to inform Counselor Jilong of this quick return. The giant demon king unleashes a colossal wind attack that completely shatters the stone floor. Hidden in the shadow of a flying boulder, the old man curses in frustration, realizing that without the ground, there is no escape. Just then, the human soldiers are startled when the small communication scroll suddenly hits one of them on the forehead. Assessing the chaos in the city, the scout concludes it's too late to go down and decides to invade the area to warn the bosses. With a sadistic smile, Jir scoffs, asking if the old enemy wasn't the big shot. The big monster's silhouette stands out under the sunset light before the counselor trapped on the flying rock. Trying to save his own skin, Simon asks for calm, reminding him that they both work for the boss and peace is essential. The giant lord just turns his head, cursing the human as trash with total contempt. He warns that the time has finally come to settle scores, with the cowards hiding around there. At that exact moment, the protagonist's eye glows a greenish hue, signaling the time to attack. The reincarnated warrior raises his arm, unleashing a violent charge of destructive purple thunder. Glone and the female lackey fire their deadly spells in an impressive simultaneous assault. Standing amidst the rubble, the Demon King notices the attacks approaching from all directions. Seizing the opening, Faya plummets from the sky in her giant form, delivering a crushing green blow. The monster quickly looks up, preparing his defensive stance against the colossal threat. The protagonist attacks from above with his lightning, while the mage swiftly advances from the side, easily blocking the triple impact. Jir finds this whole tactical coordination quite interesting. Without any effort, the big guy summons a massive wall of wind that repels all enemy assaults. Agile in the air, the knight notes that the ambush failed and tells them to initiate the emergency plan at once. The female lackey quickly retreats, warning she needs to use her magic carefully to avoid harming allies in the confusion. Immediately, the giant fires a lethal sequence of hardened wind slashes at the group on the ground. Dodging with mastery, Glon warns his companions about the great danger of those invisible blades. Faya takes the lead and blocks the impact with her heavy shield to ensure everyone's protection. The hero tells them to keep the beast busy while the mage summons her white mist mirage, covering the scene. The Lord fires more wind, finding it useless for them to try and kick up dust, as he can simply blow the mist away. With her vision heavily impaired, the giant mage ends up missing the heavy blow of her shield against the target. Simon's partner pushes the air with her magic and warns that the monster is pulling the blades back. The treacherous attack returns at an absurd speed, directly hitting the giant leader's armored back. Landing on the ground, the hero realizes the beast deliberately raised the petals to camouflage the real blows. Away from the center, Princess Yvette catches her breath after surviving the intense exchange of magic. Relentlessly, Jir fires a massive piercing hurricane that collides with extreme violence against the golden defense. The towering king roars at his soldiers, ordering the assault squad to mercilessly annihilate the invaders. A gigantic horde of gray demons charges fiercely, treading on the destroyed city's rubble. The beast announces he will use the troops' time to track the dragon and orders the guards to protect his position. The noblewoman wields her red sword, warning that human wave tactics don't work against her abilities. Unleashing all her power, Yvette summons the colossal manifestation of a completely devastating sea of blood. The immense scarlet wave advances with fury, swallowing the entire enemy army in a brutal and disgusting bath. Annoyed by the failure, the Lord decides to finish off the weaker ones, since the winged creature isn't showing up. Suddenly, the reincarnated warrior appears bathed in shadows, questioning if that is true. The knight advances relentlessly, activating the first form of his lethal thunder technique. Completely shocked, the giant demands to know the boy's origin, who just replies that the departed don't need to know. The Demon King breaks into a cold sweat, realizing on the spot that the situation has just become extremely dangerous. The alley gathers her black flames and ice, asking not to be left out of this great lethal party. The powerful combined magic cuts through the skies in a destructive spiral, aiming exactly at the giant monster. Without retreating a step, the beast prepares the flowing water technique to directly break the enemy's defense. The protagonist collides with the target in an absurd clash of thunder against the opponent's blue power. The colossal energy of the impact sweeps through the ruins, pulverizing the surrounding stones in a great shockwave. Landing a bit further away, the female lackey questions if the hero finally managed to take down the Demon King. The knight states he didn't feel the cut and deduces the monster spent a lot of magic creating a protective membrane. In the middle of the dust, Jia re-emerges, quite breathless and with his clothes torn, but still standing. Summoning his dark viper, Glon guarantees that beating the beast to a pulp will be very easy with its magic depleted. Suddenly, old Simon emerges from the darkness of the ground, wielding a large golden spike in his hands. The human counselor leaps with pure malice and drives the heavy weapon directly into the big guy's leg. Seizing the perfect moment, the female lackey advances through the air, ready to deliver her best blow. Keeping up the relentless pace, the reincarnated hero also goes on a brutal offensive. A direct and crushing punch from the protagonist hits the target's face head on without any chance of blocking. The extremely violent impact throws the beast back as it suffers heavy and continuous physical punishment. Maintaining the relentless massacre, Glon delivers a merciless knee strike charged with pure dark electricity. The duo acts in perfect sync in the air, beating the Lord from all sides without giving any rest. The enemy army finally arrives, shouting that the entire troop has come to support their great leader. The crowd of gray monsters advances furiously, but the princess tells them to leave that area to her. Vet wields her great sword, overflowing with an intense and terrifying greenish magic aura. Sensing their certain and imminent end, one of the demons curses his own luck, completely terrified. Believing in victory, a monster scoffs that the giant missed her blow, but ends up brutally crushed in the confusion. A colossal slash of light tears through the entire city, disintegrating the line of enemies in a single instant. At the center of the combat, the towering king continues to be mercilessly crushed by the hero's magic. Agonizing on his feet, the lord accumulates all his remaining power, exuding an intense and oppressive dark aura. He smiles sadistically, stating he finally waited for the chance for their defenses to drop. In a completely self-destructive act, Jir explodes his own body in a devastating rain of magic spikes in all directions. The knight's eye widens in shock, and he tells the entire group to defend against that urgent piercing attack. Suddenly Maravek appears, blocking the spikes, and scoffs, asking if they thought he was out of magic.